Old School Lane Casual Chats is brought to you by oldsschoollane.blogspot.com and is associated with Channel Frederator, Manic Expression, The Comic Book Cast, and The Arun Mehta Show.
All that is near us we must know could disappear any day, be careful. The main key to finding happiness lies nowhere else but in my soul. Reminisce, you could recall the very last time you felt joy. Or maybe you are so blessed to a point where you can't remember anything. It's a harmony, a miracle, being able to breathe and live at all. So here is your one and only chance. Life is an opportunity. All that is near us we must know could disappear any day, be careful. The main key to finding happiness lies nowhere else but in my soul. You know, the closer you get to something, the tougher it is to see it. And I'll never take it for granted. Let's go. Some people may call a kind deed an act of mere hypocrisy, but never mind those who have lost faith. You shouldn't give in to what they say. As a matter of fact, let me tell you, even if it was for a selfish cause, a salvageable hypocrisy is superior to murderous honesty. Everybody tells you from time to time to never give up, like the phrase from a movie. They tell you to stand up for yourself, as if it was always that easy. Gather a handful of courage in my heart to go on and survive another day, and I'll never take it for granted. Let's go.
Hello everyone, welcome to a new episode of Casual Chats. I am Patricia, and I am back with Eli, aka the Cartoon Hero. Welcome back, Eli.
Good to be back, Patty.
Alright, so, around this time last year, we discussed about Naruto in honor of the 500th episode of Naruto Shippuden airing, and the start of Boruto the movie. It's since then, Boruto Naruto Next Generations has been out, and I just heard recently that they're actually going to be recording some brand new episodes of Naruto Shippuden in the English version, as hinted at by Miley Flanagan on Twitter. Also coincidence, the time that I'm going to be releasing this episode of Casual Chat, I'm going to be off in MegaCon, and who knows, maybe a possibility I could meet Miley, so that'd be freaking awesome. But no, it's about time that we actually continue our discussion of Naruto with Naruto Shippuden, and we knew that this was going to happen, so I take it that let's just get this over with.
Yeah, and since the last episode, I have released what was the 300th episode of my show, which of course was talking about Naruto Shippuden, since I reviewed the original Naruto for my 200th episode. I figured it was appropriate. And since the show had, well, technically ended at that point, then I decided that it would be a good time to finally tackle it.
Yeah.
But there were complications. I'm going to say I'm still proud of that review at this point.
That's good, yeah. I thought that you did a really excellent job discussing about Naruto Shippuden and its pros and cons.
No, Shippuden is like I say with so many series I talk about, this is not the worst series I've reviewed. Then again, given the other things I've reviewed, I've set the bar pretty low. I don't think anything is quite top that Alice in Wonderland movie yet.
Oh my god.
The whole time I wrote this review, I think I said in the episode that I was basically firewalking on eggshells the whole time. I want to be, first and foremost, a fair critic. I don't want to be overly judgmental, because I know Shippuden and Naruto in general has been around for a long time with a lot of people. And I'm not going to say that I wasn't part of that fandom at one point, because I was. I actually got into the series when it started, actually slightly before it started airing, because I happened to, I think I talked about this before with either Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh, but basically, shortly before Naruto and the Four Kids dub of One Piece happened to air in America, I happened to walk into a game store and find that they actually sold Shonen Jump Monthly, and I started reading that. And because just flipping through it, at the point I discovered it, Yu-Gi-Oh was in the middle of its Monster World arc, which is actually a very interesting arc, but it's not the subject of it's not the subject of this podcast. So I'm going to skip that. But it also had Naruto and One Piece in it, and that's what got me into those series. So like I said, I have a little bit of a history with this franchise, but even I will fully admit that Shippuden is definitely a big step down in quality from the original series.
Yeah, I do agree with that as well. Considering that the stakes were really high with the final battle with Naruto and Sasuke over at the Valley of the End, and you would think that, man, how can they top that? And, well, you would think that, with that final shot in which, Sakura's training with Tsunade, and Naruto is going to be leaving for a few years in the Hidden Leaf Village with Jiraiya, and you're thinking, oh man, it's going to kick up from here. And a lot of people thought that, with Kishimoto being heavily influenced by Dragon Ball, you would think that, maybe Shippuden would be the Dragon Ball Z equivalent. But sadly, that is not the case. So, yeah, I guess I'll briefly talk about Shippuden, because I don't think we really need to go in depth about how we first got introduced to it, because I'm sure that you basically just went over watching from the 2.5 years of filler all the way up into episode 1 of Shippuden, right? Or did you read the manga first?
I read the manga first, and around about that time was when the series started to take off in America. That's, as we discussed on a previous podcast, I played the games. I watched. Some of them were great, some of them not so much, and I kind of sort of stopped watching the anime when the first anime, when the filler kicked in. So the first Naruto series is definitely known for that 83 episode chunk of filler that was right near the end. And I understand why, because it was all crammed together into one grotesque lump at the end of the series. But the thing is, while I was researching for that review, because I hadn't seen all of Shippuden when I started it, because I ended up seeing enough or pretty much all of it when I was writing the review, but just so I would know which episodes to watch in advance, I looked up an online list of which episodes of Shippuden were filler and which weren't. Over 50% of Shippuden is filler.
Yes.
Even when you compare that to the original series, that's just like, so to quote an often used expression in this community, what were they thinking?
Yeah, exactly. I have no idea, to be quite honest. I mean, I can understand where some of the filler came from in terms of developing the story, but we'll get to that. I remember when Shippuden was announced and everybody was, really excited about we're going to be finally going over to the next chapter of Naruto where he's going to grow up a little bit, where he's going to get a little stronger, and it's going to continue off the story of Akatsuki. And then when the anime version came out, I remember I was in MegaCon that year. This must have been like MegaCon 2000, I don't remember, 7 or 8. And everywhere I saw was a whole bunch of Naruto cosplayers and t-shirts of people writing down the phrase, "The filler is over." And everybody was just really excited about it. And so that got me excited. In fact, I remember the first time that I saw the very first episode of Shippuden online in Japanese. I actually had to take it was in my lunch break when I was working in the computer lab in college, and And, you know, it was just about to pop up in the whatever streaming site that there was at the time. I don't think that, you know, Crunchyroll was even around at that time. And if it was, I don't think they even aired on Naruto. So I watched it on, like, some sort of BitTorrent website, already translated in fan subs. But I still wanted to watch it. And so I, you know, said I was going to be a few minutes late because I needed to take care of something. And I went over to my college's library and I watched the first episode, and I saw like the first 10 minutes because I didn't want to get in trouble for my job. And, and I just was, like, really excited because, you know, we've been waiting for a long time for this. I mean, I had to sit down and watch, like, at least over, like, 90 episodes of filler for 2.5 years, while all of us at Wolvolution were making a whole bunch of jokes about how bad the filler was and how crazy it was going to be. So this was, like, a monumental moment. And the first episode starts off immediately where Naruto and Sakura are looking for Sasuke. And I was like, what? This is not supposed to happen until, like, much later on in the story. This is, like, at least toward the halfway point of the second arc. But they're already showing this, like, right away. And I was, like, really confused.
See, we gotta get to Sasuke immediately. We gotta bait those fangirls.
Yes. We must get the fangirls to watch our show. It is all part of our keikaku.
That scene, it brought to mind like in old cartoons that when you see the characters running through hallways based on doors and opening them, and I kept getting the feeling that they were going to run into something goofy on the other side of one of those doors, like a lady in the shower screaming.
Yeah. The lady in the shower, maybe somebody having intercourse in a bed, somebody changing into...
That weird bear from The Shining.
Yeah, had to. Oh my god. So, yeah, basically, it does play into the last part of the second arc, in which we do have Naruto, Sakura, Sai, and Yamato looking for Sasuke, and then they finally found him, and he's just standing there looking all stoic and emotionless.
Because that's all he ever looks.
Yeah, that's all he ever looks. He just has, like, no emotions, and that's supposed to be, like, hot and badass to a bunch of teenage girls. Alright, so basically, they feel, like, really threatened by his, stoic persona looking down, and then Sasuke comes down and said that he was gonna kill Naruto. And then we had that scene with the nine-tailed fox, and talking about, like, how... you know, Naruto was weak, and then Sasuke comes along, and then the nine-tailed fox tells him, oh, your strength is just like Madara Uchiha, and then Sasuke's like, I don't even know what you're talking about, and we wouldn't get to know about what happens until at least, like about a couple of months later.
See, I want to talk about that scene because it doesn't make sense, continuity-wise. Now, obviously, that scene is meant to foreshadow that Sasuke has the Mangekyo Sharingan, which is supposedly the strongest of his bullshit eye powers, though he pulls out many of those as the series continues. But at this point in time, he hadn't unlocked the Mangekyo, so why was he able to do that?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, I guess we could argue that, maybe this was just an illusion, because Naruto tends to be caught in illusions a lot of times, but no, this is not an illusion. It actually does happen.
As soon as the opening theme plays, we cut immediately to where the actual first chapter of the manga started off, and you're like, what was the point of that?
Yeah, that exactly. Now, I want to give credit to Boruto Naruto Next Generations for kind of like foreshadowing something similar, in which, you know, it takes place like much later on. It takes place like years later. And then you see that the Hidden Leaf Village is like decimated into the ground, like almost a point of rubble. And then you have...
Like the fourth time.
Yes, exactly. And then you just have this, you know... ninja by the name of Kawaki, who he's like fighting off against with Boruto, and he has his eyes slashed, and he has a sword. And then while they're fighting, Boruto then remembers, I remember when I was a kid and I was like some impudent brat, and I was living through the Hidden Leaf Village, and there was peace and prosperity and blah 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 blah. And so that actually is interesting because I'm sure that maybe sometime in the future we will talk about Boruto Naruto Next Generations, but you see, that's actually a really interesting example about how they can do this concept right, in which, it lures you into, what happened to the Hidden Leaf Village? How did it get destroyed? Who's this Kawaki guy? And, how far does it take place in the future? Because we see Boruto as, a young adult. But here with Naruto Shippuden, it's not in the manga. It clearly begins right after the 2.5-year time skip, and then we have Naruto coming back into the Hidden Leaf Village with Jiraiya, and then he reunites with Sakura and Kakashi, and that's when they start to show off about how strong they've gotten.
Well, how strong they've gotten in theory. So when they come back, we get demonstrations that Naruto has better mastered the Rasengan, and that Sakura has clearly undergone some strength and medical ninjutsu training with Tsunade. In theory, I love this because I don't think it's a secret that when I made that review that Tsunade has quickly become my favorite character in Naruto.
Yeah, in fact, I remember in an interview with Kishimoto that out of all the characters you want to be, who do you want to be? And he said Tsunade. And a lot of people were confused at the time because, why would you want to be an old woman? But then when you look more into Tsunade's character, especially in Shippuden, it makes a lot of sense.
Right. I just love how she doesn't take crap from anybody. The idea is that, like with the other two Sannin, Sakura is basically becoming the next generation of Tsunade, because she's undergone training from her. And in theory, that's great, because Sakura was basically mimetically useless in the first series. The joke that a lot of people made was that she was useless. And the thing is, I didn't want that to be true. I wanted them to do more with her character. And now that she's undergone training with Tsunade, who has some interesting powers and cool abilities, then maybe, just maybe, Sakura would play more of an important role in the story, but she really doesn't. Up until near the end, like the last third of the series, she doesn't really do that much except for occasionally heal a character or two. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really frustrating because you would think that Sakura would be a lot more useful. Like, she's already a very smart character, and she's already very strategic. She can be able to easily get rid of genjutsu, and also, she has the strength, and she can heal people. I mean, even when Kakashi sees her strength for the first time, he even says, if she keeps up the training, she'll become even stronger than the 5th Hokage. And she does have that potential, but unfortunately, it pretty much amounts to nothing. I mean, we could even argue about that with pretty much almost all the characters, in which they show up, they look cool for a few minutes, and then they're just pushed into the wayside.
I can tell right away that some people are probably already typing the comments about one fight later on, but I'll get back to that when it comes up.
Sure.
So they come back to the village, and after basically having a repeat of the Get the Bells mission that Kakashi did with them back when they were training with him to basically see how far the two have come.
Which I actually love, by the way. I actually love the fact that they were able to call back to the very first mission, and Kakashi says that he's not going to hold back, and he pulls out his Sharingan eye, showing that he's serious, and, basically showcasing Naruto and Sakura working together, and I actually really like that. And of course, in Shippuden, they actually expanded it a little bit more, because in the manga, it actually covers in just one chapter, and it basically just ends with Naruto spoiling the new book of Jiraiya, and Kakashi just basically tries to close his eyes and cover his ears because he doesn't want to hear it, and then they were able to just grab the bell, and I thought that was really clever. I just really wanted to see more clever moments like that. I mean, I'm sure for a lot of people they may think, oh, it's just fan service, but I think no. I think that this is actually a pretty cool scene because it actually just shows progression, which I felt that there should have been more moments of that in Shippuden.
It's like poetry; they rhyme. But yeah, I really do like that idea in theory as well. But the thing is, they still need to go get Sasuke back. Which part of me is like, it's just one missing guy. How many resources do you need to expend on this character who clearly doesn't want to come home?
Yeah, now I can understand something like Saving Private Ryan, in which, his three brothers are dead, and he's the only one left, and he needs to come back home to his mom, and so basically a whole military group sacrifice their lives so that he can come home. I can understand that. But Sasuke has clearly gone to the dark side, unintentional Star Wars reference. And he doesn't really care about going back to the Hidden Leaf Village. All he cares about is getting stronger so he can kill his brother. That's it.
Basically, they eventually decide that if somebody's going to go and get him back, then because... in theory, part of it is because they need to keep an eye on what Orochimaru's doing because he's still around.
Right.
So not for much longer. But let's just actually, never mind.
Yeah.
And then they basically get assigned because Kakashi's going to be busy with other things. They basically get assigned not only a new team captain, Yamato, who really the most memorable thing about him were his eyes.
Yeah. Now, right before we discuss about the second arc, I want to quickly discuss about the first one, which, the first arc is called the Gaara retrieval arc. It basically that you have Akatsuki coming back, and their main mission is to capture the remaining tailed beasts for their plan. And so they head over to the Hidden Sand Village, and they send off two new members of Akatsuki that we've never seen. That's Sasori and Deidara. And Deidara can be able to make, like, these clay animals and things with his hands that are, that have mouths in it. And Sasori can be able to control puppets, and he used to belong in the Sand Village. And so they capture Gaara, and basically you have Naruto, Sakura, and Kakashi. Their mission is to find Gaara right before he's, the tail beast is out of his body. And then eventually we have, Guy, Neji, Tenten, and Lee coming into the fight. And then basically we get introduced to other characters. We get introduced to Chio. Chio. Yeah, Chio. So Chio is the grandmother of Sasori, and she's basically like, apparently she has a bit of a rivalry on Tsunade because they're both medical healers, and that would have been really interesting, that you have the scene in which that nobody can be able to heal Kankuro from his poison, and so Sakura was the only one who could be able to do it, and Chio was really impressed. It would have been really interesting, and maybe we can bring up that dynamic of, the fact that Sakura was able to do something that Chio couldn't do, and she was trained by someone who she considered to be her rival.
Right. And going back to that moment where they capture him, it's revealed that Kankuro, who is also a puppet master, his puppets were actually designed by Sasori, who was able to outwit him and basically hit him with what's essentially a scorpion tail full of poison. And the Gaara retrieval arc actually goes a long way toward repairing the relationship between the Hidden Sand and Leaf Villages, which would come back later on. That part I actually do like, and the fact that Sakura was able to heal him, that does demonstrate that she does have a purpose there. But then they decide to go after the agents of the Akatsuki, and they... You said that Team Guy was part of the fight. Well, they are, but only tangentially, because they basically only end up fighting clones of themselves, which were specifically made so they could buy time, so that the Akatsuki could extract the Shukaku from Gaara.
Yes.
Because they need it for their grand master plan, which we'll get back to that later.
And also we have, while Kisame's clone is fighting off Team Guy, we have Itachi's clone fighting off against Naruto and the gang. And we have this really creepy looking genjutsu that he does towards Kakashi, and then we have the scene in which when Naruto, shows off his double Rasengan, which after this he never does it again, which is kind of crazy. And then he tries his very best to release the genjutsu by basically releasing a whole bunch of chakra, but it doesn't work. And then eventually Itachi does escape, basically suggesting that they already had enough time to get out the Shukaku from Gaara's body.
And then Chiyo and Sakura arrive on the scene while the others go off after Daidara, who... that also ends up being a wild goose chase. But I also want to talk about the fight with Sasori, because this is another scene. This is another scene that people like to bring up where they're like, oh no, but Sakura isn't useless. She had this one fight in the series, and here's the thing: this technically isn't really Sakura's doing. Because the whole time that she's fighting Sasori, she's actually being controlled like a puppet, because Chiyo has the puppet master abilities similar to her grandson. And this is really pretty much Chiyo's fight as opposed to Sakura's.
Yeah, because other than, trying to get Gaara back, there's not really much of a connection towards Sakura and Sasori. With Chiyo and Sasori, it makes a lot of sense because that's her grandson that she's fighting off against. And not to mention that, there's even one scene in which she pulls off puppets of his parents, which is freaky as hell.
Yeah, Sasori's backstory in general is freaky as hell, considering that he turned himself into a human puppet. That's just insane, but... much like pretty much every member of the Akatsuki, they give him this last-minute redemption arc, where at the very last scene they try to say, oh, but he wasn't really such a bad person after all.
That's pretty much every single villain in Naruto Shippuden. Oh, he wasn't such a bad guy. He had a good reason on why he wanted to pretty much, take over the world. It's like, oh man... I understand about sympathizing your villains because that makes them more relatable, that makes them more fascinating. But, that just kind of takes away a little bit of their evil luster.
It's like I said in the review, because, well, actually, you know what, I'm going to save that for later.
Sure.
But the thing is, if they had just done that with Sasori, that would have been fine. And maybe not have it be done with every character, but it really gets repetitive after a while, and especially with a character later on, it really takes the wind out of the sails of that arc.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So eventually they get Gaara back, but he no longer has the Shukaku inside of him. And the thing is, he's basically, for all intents and purposes, he's dead. But Chiyo manages to use her final secret special healing technique and bring him back to life, but it cost her life. And we're like, okay, we just met this character in this arc, but I guess we're supposed to sympathize with her now. It's kind of sad, but at the same time, it's sacrificing a side character to bring back a main character, which is still a bit cheap to me.
Yeah, that's true. The first Naruto, you had the likes of Zabuza and Haku, and they were shown off as really bad guys, but they also had some pretty messed up backstories that were very tragic, and they did have a little bit of redemption in the end. But at least with Zabuza, he essentially just killed Gato and all of his men. He didn't get at least a little bit of a sentence of, oh, maybe he wasn't such a bad guy after all, until when he confronted Haku.
The more I look back on Naruto, the more I think, did it really get any better after the Zabuza arc?
I mean, that's debatable, but I guess, but I can see where you're coming from. But I just want to bring up that example in which that, you have this, like, huge battle, and you would think that there's, like, a lot at stake, but in the end, it just kind of, like, peters a little bit. Like, you don't really feel any sadness with Chio's death compared to the sadness that you felt with Zabuza and Haku's death. I mean, it had a lot of potential, too, because, you had the rivalry with Chio and Tsunade, and you had, she was the one responsible for putting, I think she was the one who helped along the way of putting the tailed beast into Gaara, and also, she was fighting against her grandson. So there was a lot of, like, interesting backstory that could have built up into fleshing out Chio, but it doesn't really amount to that.
Yeah. Well, at the end of that arc, we're actually introduced to two other members of the Akatsuki who will become important later. First, there's Zetsu, who's really kind of a wild card, whose real purpose doesn't become clear until the very end of the series.
Yeah, Zetsu actually did appear in, like, the final shot during the Valley of the End fight, and you're thinking about, like, who is this guy? And then, finally, we do get reintroduced to him again, and he doesn't really show up other than just being, kind of like Toby's guardian, making sure that he doesn't get into trouble.
Yeah, we're introduced to Zetsu and Obito. It's Obito. Who the hell? I don't know who was surprised by that. I mean, he's got the same hair, the same eye that was undamaged after the rock fell on him. It's Obito.
Yeah.
Like, there is literally no spoiler in saying that.
Yeah, like I said before in the original Naruto podcast, even the Flash animated cartoon Fun with Akatsuki made fun of this fact that, this character with the mask on, he's Obito because he doesn't have the eye and he has the spiky hair. So, yeah, that whole thing was already kind of spread around the internet.
And the thing is, they try to misdirect it by saying, no, he's not Obito, he's Madara, and what are you talking about? But nobody believed that. Like, nobody. Even if Madara does come back later, spoilers, then nobody believed that Obito was him, that Toby was him. It's so obvious because his name is literally like almost an anagram of his original name. It's pretty much become the Aizen betrays everybody of Naruto.
Yeah, but at least with Aizen, at least it was much more of a bigger plot twist because Aizen was perceived as like a good member of the Soul Society and he was really helpful with the Shinigami. But then when he reveals to be like all twisted and evil and then he leaves Soul Society and becomes like the main bad guy of the series, that actually is a genuine twist. But this Obito Toby thing, I never really fell for it. Like I said, Fun with Akatsuki already made fun of this and there were so many fan theories and rumors spread around the internet.
It's almost as obvious as the whole, hey, the fourth Hokage was Naruto's father. Like, oh my god, that blonde-haired, blue-eyed ninja is the son of that other blonde-haired, blue-eyed ninja who disappeared right as soon as he was born.
Yeah.
Coincidence?
Yeah, right. Again, this was also spread around the internet, like, we finally get to see what the fourth Hokage looks like, and then there was, like, pictures of him and Naruto side by side. It's like, are they related? The only thing that was not even close to who the fourth Hokage was again Fun with Akatsuki made that whole claim that the fourth Hokage was the leader of Akatsuki because of the spiky hair. But that was back then when we only had to rely on the manga of what the characters look like. But then when the anime was in color, we did see that the that the Akatsuki leader had red hair, not blonde hair. So that pretty much was put to rest. But that was another theory that for the longest time, people thought that, the fourth Hokage was actually the leader of Akatsuki. But yeah, that was the second one. The first one was an obvious thing that he and Naruto were related in some way, shape, or form.
So after that whole mess is over, we're introduced to who will become Team 7's temporary new third member, Sai. And as cool as his ability is, like, he can basically draw objects and bring them to life, I really don't give a damn about this character.
Yeah, he's so one-note and bland. I mean, he essentially has the ability of Rudy from Chalk Zone, except used in combat and with ink. I mean,
I love Okami too, but that doesn't make him an interesting character.
Yeah. Sure, maybe we can kind of argue about the whole fact that, maybe he's actually pretty interesting because he doesn't know about how the world works and about how he should speak, because the first time that he meets up with Naruto, he essentially says, "Do you even have a dick?" And you're like wondering, what is with this guy? He is so weird. I think I even remember an interview that Ben Diskin had in regards to voicing Sai, and he made a theory that maybe the reason why Sai acted this way was because he was autistic. And that could be a really interesting theory, that maybe he was autistic and he didn't know how to speak to people, and maybe that's why he's so monotone and confused about how to interact with others. But it's actually more of the backstory of Sai, not so much as who he is personally.
And they also get a new leader who, Yamato.
Yeah, Yamato.
That's not his real name. It's just his code name because he's in the Ninja Black Ops. They can't use his real name. And he was an experiment to replicate I believe the first Hokage's wood release techniques. But probably the thing you're going to remember most about him is those soul-piercing eyes that gave his character.
Yeah.
Don't look directly into them. It will kill you.
And it's such a shame, too, because, again, this is a good opportunity for backstory. Like, the fact that he was the only surviving experiment of a clone that Orochimaru wanted to do for the first Hokage. And then, Orochimaru didn't even know that he was alive. He thought he was dead because he did this experiment 1,000 times. And it would have been so interesting because, Tsunade knew about him. I mean, that was essentially a clone of her grandfather. Like, what was their relationship like? I mean, it's almost it would have been like a nice kind of like comparison to like Legend of Korra, in which Korra is the reincarnation of Aang and the previous avatars, and then Katara was the one training her and showing her waterbending abilities, and she had like a really close relationship. Tenzin and his children had a really good relationship, and it kind of made you question about at one point he was your dad or your husband, but yeah, I really wish that there would have been, a moment in which maybe Tsunade and Yamato would have had, a conversation regarding about, you were the clone of my grandfather and such, but we never really get that.
Yeah, so using Yamato's Black Ops training, they go to meet with Orochimaru when disguised as Sasori, and they basically need to find out who's the spy who's been conveying information to them, and to no one's surprise, it's Kabuto, because he was one of the loose ends that was left dangling at the end of the previous series.
Yeah.
And so that eventually leads to Sai stabbing them in the back, and it's just like, I don't care. Let's move on.
Yeah. I'm just expecting the Hysteria song to be playing in the background. I can't believe you stabbed me in the back.
Stabbed me in the back.
Right.
And at that point, for some reason, even after Sai betrays him, they still let him join up on this mission to retrieve Sasuke. And at this point, we finally get to the point where the anime flashed forward to in the beginning. Sasuke effortlessly wipes the floor with our heroes because he's just broken. He really is.
He's the final boss of a fighting game that you just try so hard to beat, but you can't because he spams a lot and releases all of his abilities to you right away.
But it's even worse because I brought this up in the review, but in the original series, you saw Sasuke grow a little bit as a character. There were moments where Sasuke lost that cool demeanor, and those were really effective because he's normally a very stoic character. But in Shippuden, Sasuke is basically running on autopilot at this point. He doesn't need to try, and therefore we don't need to care.
I mean, again, I really wish that, you know, Sasuke would just show a little bit more emotion than just flat face emote. But it doesn't really happen that often, even after he approaches his brother. But, yeah, basically the whole thing repeats again.
We'll get back to that.
Yeah, we'll get back to that. So, basically, that thing that we saw from the first episode is repeated again, and then it's revealed that, Sai's main mission was actually to kill Sasuke, but because Sasuke is so strong, nobody can be able to withstand his power, and so then eventually they escape, and that mission just
I can't defeat Snake Man.
Airman, actually.
I know, but in this case it's Snake Man.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, you might as well, yeah, Snake Man, Elec Man, Fireman, I don't care. But, let's see, yeah, basically that whole mission is just pretty much finished, and then they just go back, and,
Then there's a filler arc.
Then there's a filler arc, which, okay, I want to bring up something. So, after they finish this from the manga, they then introduced to the two-tailed, beast, and they were introduced to her host, and basically, that's the scene in which they capture and kill her. And then, the filler arc is actually introducing another tailed beast that we were never introduced to in the manga. And we did get a picture of what he looked like and his tailed beast because Kishimoto was doing concept art for one of the chapters of the manga, and it showed off all of the tailed beasts and all of their their hosts. This was around the time in which this is right after Killer Bee was introduced. And then we just saw this other guy that we never knew of, and we saw an old man. And these are the only two that we never know of throughout the series, and we were thinking, this will be really interesting. And I guess this is where the filler arc could have really benefited from, that we could have been introduced to the other tailed beasts and hosts that we've never seen in the manga. I think we even talked about this in the original Naruto podcast, in which, we kind of appreciate the fact that they did at least, develop some of the characters like Hinata and Anko. And I thought maybe this would be a case here, but man, it's not even remotely interesting. In fact, it's really annoying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate the idea of an anime having filler. That episode of Dragon Ball Z where Goku and Piccolo learn to drive, that's a filler episode.
Yeah, and I love that episode.
Things you'll ever see.
Yeah, and also the episode where Kakashi, they try to find out what his face looked like, that's also filler, and that's hilarious.
And there were some episodes like that in the first series where they tried to further expand on concepts that were introduced in the manga but were kind of skimmed over. But it's presented in such a way here that you really don't care about the other tailed beasts, even when they bring in efforts to introduce them. There are some tailed beast characters basically, okay, Killer Bee is awesome. I know we're technically going out of order, but he's one of the best characters in this series.
I love him so much. I remember when I first saw him in the manga, and he was rapping, and everybody was looking at him confused. It's I'm gonna love this guy. It's so crazy.
Yeah, he's just so out of place here, but compared to all the other stuff that's going on, that actually makes him work better. Again, I don't know what it is about me and gravitating to wannabe gangsta characters in anime, because I had a similar fascination with Beat from The World Ends With You, and he's definitely got that aesthetic too. But surprisingly, sometimes it really works. And Killer Bee is one of those cases.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so after a little bit of filler, because they need to build up our appetites for the filler to come. Because, yeah, I'm looking at it. Okay, I don't think that I was actually wrong with what I said before, because it's not 50% filler, but it's very close to it. It has, I believe, the total in the end for Shippuden's episodes, including the movies that were basically scrap movies and put together at the end of the series, that it has a total of 787 episodes. And of those, 222 of those episodes are filler. Yeah. So that's almost 50% of the series.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
For further evidence of that, you just need to look at the fact that the Naruto manga ended its run in Japan in 2014, and Shippuden's anime didn't end until last year.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Remember that the manga started in 1999, and the fact that it ended, like, last year, or the year before, it's crazy, because, to be fair, there are a lot of, long-running mangas, like, Detective Conan and stuff like that, but, with Detective Conan, they're like standalone stories, but at the same time, they do have like a structured plot about, you have this character who wants to return to, his older state, but with Naruto, the fact that, a good chunk of the reason why it was so long was because of the final arc is ridiculous.
Well, not really, because the filler is really spread out over the course of the series.
Oh, I'm talking about the manga.
Yeah. The final arc of the series actually took place over 2 days in manga time, but 3 years in real time.
Yeah, and a lot of people are complaining about that whole Dragon Ball Z thing about, like, when Frieza says, you only have 5 minutes until Namek is destroyed, and it lasted for 18 episodes.
Like that Pop Team Epic name, your motherfucking planet ends 5 minutes from now. Anyway, back on the subject, we go back to the Akatsuki hunting down more of the tailed beast users, and 2 more members end up revealing themselves, Hidan and Kakuzu, who are basically functionally immortal. They have different abilities that give them that. Hidan's basically this really crude guy, but to juxtapose that, he's also religious. He prays to this demon god Jashin, and he basically makes him immortal as long as he performs that ritual. You can literally cut off his head and he will still be alive. And then there's Kakuzu, who basically eats the hearts of people he kills. And as long as one of those Horcruxes, hearts, is still alive, then he'll still be alive. There's this arc where Asuma, leading Shikamaru's team. Asuma isn't a character that I cared a lot about in the first series, I'll be honest. But it does lead to one of the best parts of Shippuden, which I will talk about. Because I want to be fair. So they're marked to be hunted down by Shikamaru, Asuma, and those 2 guys who guard the village gates whose names no one remembers. So at the same time, Naruto's undergoing more training with Kakashi, who is teaching him how to further use his chakra, because apparently he's a wind chakra user. Which I never would have guessed by the fact that his main technique involves wind, but still.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting because, I would think that, Naruto and the elements, I do get the fact that why he's a wind user, because if you translate Shippuden, in English it translates to Hurricane Chronicles. So immediately you're kind of thinking to yourself, oh, I get it, because he's a wind user. Hurricane. Get it?
I really kind of still get a kick out of this because you remember way back in the original Naruto series, the very first episode where Naruto steals the chakra forbidden jutsu and learns the shadow clone technique. Now, it's stated that the shadow clone technique is a really dangerous forbidden art. But the thing about it is, it's not really dangerous in that using it will kill you and everyone else in the room. No, it's dangerous in that if you use it, this cheat will basically allow you to unlock God mode. Because training with the shadow clones basically allows Naruto to train faster than most other ninja could master techniques in the same amount of time. Which is a clever use of the ability, but it's also basically a cheat code for the character.
Yeah, exactly. It just really cheapens the strength that Naruto builds up over time, because you remember in the original series in which after Orochimaru seals his chakra, he's still able to win against Kiba in the Chunin exams, and he's able to almost walk on water when he was training with Konohamaru's trainer, and, he sees that he does have a lot of potential. And then when he meets up with Jiraiya and he's showing him his techniques, and, it just revealed that, it was blocked this entire time, and he was doing almost perfectly fine with pretty much almost his entire chakra being sealed. I mean, it just shows you about the potential that Naruto had. But the fact that, you know, I mean, in the original series, Naruto was a very weak ninja who couldn't even perform a single clone. He was, like, dead last in his group. And the fact that now there's a possibility in which he could be able to unlock God mode, and, you know, basically in a very cheap way, it just kind of, like, almost ruins the character. It's like, you know, I mean, sure, we can still look at Rock Lee, in which, you know, we have a character who works hard to overcompensate the fact that he can't do any of his techniques. But I feel like Naruto is somewhat of a similar case, but it just kind of gets ruined because of that.
Yeah, and later on in the series, they build up that Naruto and Sasuke have this great destiny, and I'm like, how did we get here? Like the whole theme of Naruto is that you are not destined for what society has in mind for you. That you can overcome your limitations and become whatever you want to be, as long as you were destined to be great in the first place.
Yeah, I think this is something that My Hero Academia nails really well.
Yeah, that series is basically early Naruto done better. So now, like I said, the fight with Hidan and Kakuzu, it does not end well, and despite Ino's best efforts, Asuma ends up dying. And like I said, I didn't really care a lot for this character. It does lead to a great payoff later on. But while this funeral is going on, the Akatsuki are sealing away the two-tailed beast, and the leader basically tells his minions his evil plan, which they should already know, but he needs to explain it for the audience. So, and of course we later learn that it's all bullshit anyway. So basically he wants to take over the world by creating a mercenary group that's loyal to no village, and then use the tailed beast to attack the villages, basically forcing the villagers to pay them protection money, driving the other shinobi out of business, and cornering the ninja economy of the world. Yeah. And somehow the other Akatsuki bought into this.
Yeah, that sounds really weird. So essentially you're letting out the tailed beast to destroy villages, and then the villages pay you money so that they can get rid of them, and then you would just basically have like this global monopoly against all of these other villages. It's like, what kind of purpose would that make if you just decimate a whole bunch of villages? I mean, are you trying to get rich off of like these tailed beasts? Because they're pretty much uncontrollable. I don't know. It's really confusing, but yeah, it doesn't lead up to anything in the end anyway. And there's like a whole group who are like saying, yeah, that sounds pretty good. I'd like to join your cause with that.
That actually brings back this old memories of this Bleach parody called Aizen's Flawless Plan, which actually isn't up on YouTube anymore as far as I know, which is a pity because I really miss it. But anyway, and so Kakashi volunteers as Team 10's new captain because Asuma's not able to because he's dead. So Sakura and Naruto decide to be backup, but for some reason Tsunade basically puts an embargo on Naruto from going until he's mastered his new technique. And if he can't do that within 24 hours, she'll send another team as backup. And I'm like, why? Tsunade, I like you, and I know it's important for Naruto to master his new technique, but I think providing backup can be done regardless of if he knows that new technique or not.
Yeah, he's already capable of fighting off Akatsuki without it.
Okay, but this leads to one of the greatest moments in Shippuden. So they attack, and Shikamaru drags off Hidan to fight him separately while the rest fight Kakuzu. And while the fight with Kakuzu is somewhat interesting, much more interesting is the fact that Shikamaru utterly destroys Hidan, and it is just so cathartic and really glorious in the way that it pays off Shikamaru's character. Because in the first series, he was built up as this genius ninja who plots things out 5 moves ahead, despite giving out the outward appearance of a slacker. But and he proves that here by basically setting up a really elaborate trap that ends up with Hidan buried in a pit owned by his family, who has just a severed head. and with rocks coming down on him. And the only person who has access to that land is Shikamaru's family. So no one else would have any reason to come to get Hidan out of safety. And as long as he doesn't offer blood to Jashin, then he's no longer immortal. So the author has confirmed that Hidan does indeed die at some point during this series. And it's just really great. And what seals the deal is that in the manga, Shikamaru sets the trap by throwing one of Asuma's cigarettes into it.
Yeah, and actually, in the manga, Shikamaru actually smokes Hidan, Azuma's cigarettes to basically try to, like, carry the torch and basically, like, continue Azuma's mission. And then he throws the cigarette to basically blow everything up. That's something that you see in, like, Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah, it's incredible. And the way it was built up, it really makes you think of the potential that this series had, because this scene and the way it was built up was near pitch perfect. I really love the Shikamaru and Hidan fight, and this is one of the few parts of Shippuden that I will unequivocally stick up for.
Yeah. Which is, it's really sad because, I mean, you would think that an amazing fight like that would lead up into even more amazing fights, but no, not necessarily so. I mean, the backstory of Kakuzu is actually pretty neat, in which he does get his abilities by stealing the hearts of ninjas and basically, like, stores it in himself, in which he cannot die. And, basically, Kakashi talks about, like, the new generation will surpass the old. And then Naruto performs his, Rasengan Shuriken, which is still kind of like in its beta form. And it definitely reminds me of, Krillin's technique from Dragon Ball.
The Destructo Disc?
Yeah, the Destructo Disc. Except that he can't throw it. At least not yet.
At first. Yeah. So after that, we get the reveal that it's a twist that's like straight out of a soap opera, because when Shikamaru goes to Asuma's grave to pay his respects, it's revealed that Kurenai, a minor character from the first series, she's just like, I'm carrying his baby. And it's just, it's like, really? Is that like the only reason this character was around? Few filler arcs in the original series that I actually enjoyed was an arc that revolved around Kurenai. She was stopping one of her former students who, because she specialized in genjutsu, was basically trapping herself inside her own mind. That was a good use of the character, but in this series, she basically exists to have Asuma's baby.
Yeah, and to be fair, I actually do like Mirai. She's actually a really interesting character because we do get to see what she becomes in the later parts of, some OVAs and Boruto Naruto Next Generations. And there's actually a really cool manga side story in which she protects Kakashi and Guy while they go over to, like, some sort of bathhouse. And she fights off against, like, these ninjas, and at the end of the story, when she's visiting, when she's visiting her father's grave, Shikamaru actually gives her the blades of Azuma, and she uses them in combat. And I thought, that's a really cool scene in which you actually do get to see, her progression as, from a child of Azuma who passed away and she knew nothing about her father to, like, a really capable ninja. And if you want to know more details, you can always watch, Boruto for that. But, we'll talk about Boruto maybe, 3 years from now when the show's over.
Yeah.
Or 5. Who knows?
Yeah. Now let's see. So after a little bit more filler, we get to a new arc that focuses on Sasuke.
Yeah!
Kill me now. Alright, so after all that build-up that Orochimaru had in the first series, to the point where they basically went out of their way to say that every filler villain was thought to be associated with him, Sasuke kills him while he's sick. in a really anticlimactic way. Like, we don't even see it.
Yeah, I know, and that really sucked, too, because, it's like kicking somebody when they're down, and I know that, Orochimaru, the reason why he kept Sasuke was that he was supposed to be his new vessel for a body, but, man, it just really that was just like a major backstab. It's like, oh, I'm going to, get rid of you because you're going to take my body, and then when he just revealed that, later on in which Orochimaru is dead, and then Sasuke just simply walks away, it's like, wow, he just basically killed a Sannin. What limitations does this guy have? None. Great.
For some reason, despite being as ridiculously overpowered as he is, he decides to form his own team. No word on whether Blackjack or hookers are involved. He forms this team of 3 misfit ninjas. Suigetsu, a character literally made of water. Karin, who's basically Sakura, except she's more of a masochist. And then there's Jugo, who Orochimaru used part of to create the curse seals, and he's basically the Hulk.
None of these characters matter except for Karin.
Yeah, they don't really contribute anything to the main story except near the end, which, again, I'll get back to that.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, I was really disappointed, too, because there was a lot of potential. Like, Suigetsu had Sabuza's sword, and you're like, where did he get that?
Yeah, they were also trying to build up this idea of the 7 swordsmen of the Hidden Mist. Nothing comes of that. Like, we don't even get to know all 7 of them, I don't think.
No, we don't.
Unless it was, like, revealed in an art book or something.
Possibly, I wouldn't be surprised. Similar to how all the tail beasts were revealed in, concept art of the manga chapter. I think that it was probably the same thing for the 7 samurai of the Hidden Mist Village. And, that could have been a great filler arc right there, in which we could have been introduced to them. But nope, we never get that.
Sasuke basically mows down Daidara, and he basically beats him due to a Deus Ex Machina, even after he self-destructs. Like, basically the equivalent of a nuke going off next to him. Sasuke pulls himself out of a snake's mouth, and he's alive. Yay. And then after that, Kabuto actually meets up with the retrieval team, and he reveals to them that he has some of Orochimaru's essence still left in him, even after he died. Which, why would you tell them that? Now they know you're a threat. So he really is Orochimaru's apprentice. So basically, and after all this, the leader of the Akatsuki, Pain, is finally revealed. Kind of. Oh, and apparently Toby was the real leader of the Akatsukis all along, except he's also Madara, but he's not. You're not fooling anyone. And so after this, Jiraiya, you almost forgot about him, didn't you? He goes to personally investigate info on the leader of the Akatsuki at Hidden Rain Village. And he finds the 2 remaining members of the Akatsuki, except for Toby and Zetsu, who we'll push those aside for now. But basically, he finds Conan, who has an interesting ability. She has these paper figures, especially paper cranes, that she can create and basically manipulate into whatever she wants.
Yeah, which there's a lot of manipulation of things in this particular series. We have Sai manipulating with ink, Deidara manipulating with clay, and now Conan manipulating with paper. There's a lot of manipulation here.
And that continues because the person that we thought was the leader of the Akatsuki was actually just one of his bodies, because Pain has the ability to basically separate his own consciousness over corpses, which he calls his paths, and take control of them. And all those paths have the abilities of the people that had those abilities when they were still alive. And so basically, Jiraiya, despite unleashing Sage Mode, is no match for them, and he actually dies a hero's death.
Which I was really emotional about it when I first saw it, because, Jiraiya was like one of my favorite characters, and then we had that amazing scene where he speaks to Tsunade right before he leaves about, about his adventure and about, Naruto's parents and all that stuff, and it really makes you feel connected towards, like, their relationship, that they've known each other for so long, and the fact that, he dies a very heroic death, and, Naruto kind of, like, looks, basically like looks into himself and wants to become stronger and wants to get revenge on what what Pain did. It was really actually very touching, and I really wanted to see what would have happened of that.
Yeah, I complained about this in my first review of Naruto, but honestly, when I went back to it with Shippuden and I actually rewatched it, Jiraiya's death is actually one of the few deaths that did get me emotional, especially at the end when he says aloud to no one that his next book is going to be called The Tale of Naruto Uzumaki, which is really subtle way of saying that he's passing on the torch to his apprentice, who he's finally acknowledging as such. Mm-hmm. And with his dying breath, he's actually able to send a message to Konoha hinting at Pain's true identity. I need to mentally prepare myself for this a little bit. Because after one of the few deaths in this series that actually means something, because we'll get back to that in a minute, Sasuke finally makes his way to Itachi. This time he's got nowhere to run. The confrontation that's been built up since the first series. Sasuke confronts his brother, the man who murdered his entire family, and it sucks.
Oh my god. And we were waiting for this, by the way. We waited for this for years. Like, you know, if you knew about the manga from, like, the 90s, and leading all the way up into this big climactic battle, you saw, you know, the confrontation between Sasuke and Itachi, and then when he, you know, that infamous moment in which, when he grabs him and he says that you lack hatred, it's like, oh yeah, I want to see him die a very painful death. I want him to get the treatment that he deserved after killing Sasuke's family and the entire Uchiha clan. I want him to suffer. But nope. Of course it didn't happen that way.
Yeah, the first half of the battle was basically, oh, you hit me, but it was all an illusion, and rinse and repeat. And then they start pulling out these weird new abilities which are actually references to Japanese mythology that I recognize, like Susanoo and Orochi and Amaterasu, but I'm not sure what those abilities have to do with mind reading or casting illusions with your eyeballs, but all right.
Sure.
So they pull out these weird new abilities, and at the very end, after several new episodes of pulling new abilities out, how does this fight end? Itachi collapses from exhaustion because he was injured before the fight.
So he didn't really fight in his like his full strength. He was basically already injured, and then he was gonna fight Sasuke anyway. And it's like, oh, this would have been a great opportunity for like a full-on battle, but it didn't really end up that way, and it just was really disappointing.
Yeah, both fighters collapse, but at the end, this is how Itachi dies.
Yeah.
Except not really, because well, we'll get back to that.
Yeah.
And so this whole time, Naruto's team has been fighting Toby, and Toby is basically untouchable because he can pull things into alternate dimensions, and we're led to believe that he has some kind of space-time manipulation ability, but really he just has an alternate dimension that he's pulling people or attacks into. But it's still a pretty cool ability. But anyway, he and Zetsu gather up the body of Sasuke and take him back to their lair. And Sasuke learns the truth about why Itachi did what he did. Now, back in the days before Konoha was founded, two of the most powerful clans were the Uchiha and the Senju. Tsunade is a member of the Senju. Now, the Uchiha leader Madara ended up clashing with the Senju leader Hashirama, who, when he tried to make peace with them when founding Konoha, because he believed the Uchiha would end up being eliminated as a result. So he used his Mangekyo to control the Nine-Tailed Fox and battled Hashirama at the Valley of the End, where Naruto and Sasuke fought. And at the end of it, Madara lost control of the Nine-Tailed Fox, and everyone believed he was dead. And they blamed him for the attack. And little by little, the Uchiha began to shrink in power because it's basically meant to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. But honestly, I still don't know why it happened that way. But anyway, 16 years later, the Nine-Tails reappears, and the Uchiha are blamed for it, and they're all banished to one city. So, and apparently Itachi, because he was a secret double agent the whole time, he was ordered to eliminate the Uchiha because they were planning a coup d'etat against Konoha. See, Sasuke, your brother killed your entire family because he loved you. And in fact, he was a real pacifist, which totally justifies him helping a criminal obtain living super weapons.
Yeah, sure. Right.
Wow. There's so much bullshit to unpack there.
Oh my god. Okay, so let's take this bit by bit, shall we? So, the reason why Itachi killed his family was because there was a coup d'etat to plan against the Hidden Leaf village, and he's like, I'm just gonna kill them all. Because I respect and I love my village so much, I don't want to see any of them die. And then, basically, he just leaves Sasuke alive because he thinks that he has the potential to unlock the Mangekyo, similar to him and Madara. Then, we essentially have him teaming up against a guy who wants to capture tailed beasts so that they can be able to destroy villages and get paid for it, even though that turns out to be a lie. And, oh my god, just why? Oh my, you know what, there's such thing as, like, revealing too much information or information that just becomes incredibly convoluted, that it kind of just, like, ruined it. Like, the whole mystery of why Itachi killed his parents and making him look like a sadistic killer, I mean, that was enough. That was enough to, like, get you excited about when Sasuke was finally going to be, going up against Itachi. But it gets ruined because of this convoluted plot that essentially leads to nothing.
Like I said, the build-up for Asuma's revenge, for Shikamaru's revenge against Hidan for Asuma, that was done well. This is the opposite of that. They built up this idea since the first series, and once again, it's the whole we've got to redeem the bad guy at the last minute. And even worse, after all this, what does Sasuke do? I have it. I'm going to kill everybody. That'll solve it. Just... What? What are you doing? There's no reason for this. There's just... It basically makes everything that... If you buy this, which, by the way, you have no reason to believe that Toby is telling you the truth. He could just be pulling an Aizen on you. It was one of the most disappointing things I'd ever seen. And we're not even to the worst part of this series yet.
Yeah, I think that at this point in time, when I finally read that manga chapter, I pretty much took a break from it for a while. I was like, wow, I'm so frustrated and disappointed that that's how it ended up. And I just basically took a break after that. I was like, oh, I need to look at something else. And then, like, a few months later, when there was, like, the whole talks of the, Killer Bee and about how he was, like, this cool character, it's like, oh, right, I'll come back and read it. So, yeah, I mean...
Killer Bee's great. That's like the next thing that happens. Sasuke and his team go and collect essentially collect the eight-tailed beast. And Killer Bee is the host of the Eight Tails, which is simultaneously a goat and an octopus. It's weird.
A goatopus.
But I like Killer Bee enough to justify it.
Yeah.
And then there's... And to his credit, Sasuke supposedly defeats him, and he actually shows a tiny bit of humanity when Karin ends up getting burned by Amaterasu. But when he tries to bring Killer Bee back to the Akatsuki for sealing, it's revealed that the body was just a tentacle of the tailed beast that took on his form. So Killer Bee's alive, which is a legitimate yay moment. So, in the meantime, Naruto goes off to the Toad Sanctuary so he can master Sage Mode, because apparently that's the only way that they can take care of Pain. So, now this proves difficult because the Fox is basically fighting him every step of the way. In the meantime, Pain and all of his past decide to invade Konoha so they can interrogate them about where to find Naruto. So the next arc is basically Pain as Batman going, "Where is he?" But almost none of them know where he is. So you could say that Konoha getting devastated was kind of Naruto's fault. Whoops.
Yeah.
But anyway.
You know what? I will say this, that, you know, a lot of people have really mixed opinions about Sage Mode, but at least this is a justified God Mode that I can get behind, because, you know, Jiraiya also learned Sage Mode when he was fighting off pain, and I was like, okay, this is a good reason why he should get stronger, because he killed his teacher, he killed his master, and he wants to be able to learn the same technique that, you know, his teacher learned and was able to master. And I was like, okay, that's actually very justified, and I thought that was really cool. But yeah, basically the whole thing about like, you know, I'm just gonna do it in secret, and, you know, basically the village was destroyed because he never told anybody where he was at. I mean, yeah, he could have told at least somebody. He could have told, I don't know, maybe like...
not that they should have told Pain had he told somebody, but it still kind of makes me go, yeah, you kind of messed that up, didn't you? But anyway.
Yeah.
So eventually, Naruto masters Sage Mode. Well, kind of. He's cheating using the shadow clones. But basically, he returns to Konoha, fights Pain, and utterly wrecks his shit. At this point, he actually can throw the Rasen Shuriken, which is actually pretty cool, because it kind of calls back to that windmill shuriken that you never saw used after the Zabuza fight. But basically, Naruto beats most of Pain's paths except for the final and most used one, the Deva path, the one that has gravity manipulation abilities. So Sage Mode starts to run out at that point, and when that happens, Pain gets the drop on him and binds him to the ground with chakra rods until someone unexpected steps in to help. Because of all characters, it's Hinata who comes to Naruto's rescue, actually holding her own for a bit until she seemingly gets fatally stabbed.
Yeah,
while confessing her love to him.
And watching this, I wished that the Awakened Hinata arc in the original Naruto was canon, because that would have made it like almost justified as to how strong that Hinata's become. Because when we first see her in Shippuden, she's actually like hiding in the background, really shy of meeting up with Naruto, and then Naruto eventually just meets up with her and says hi, and then she faints, and then you go from that to like Hinata defending Naruto and kicking ass against Pain. It's like, that's pretty awesome.
But the thing is, as awesome as this idea is in theory, well, we'll get back to that. So basically, Hinata kind of sacrifices herself. She's not dead. What's kind of sad is that when the original manga of this came out, it was like the week of shonen depression, because two other characters in the big three died or seemingly died. At this point in Bleach, when this chapter came out, Hitsugaya got tricked into stabbing Hinamori. She didn't die, but Ace died for real in One Piece. And then Hinata, after finally confessing her love, got killed for it. Well, that's how it looked anyway.
Yeah, that's how it looked.
That was enough to depress me a lot back when I saw this, because I was following all three series at this point. I pretty much had to get into a new series, Gurren Lagann, to dig me out of the hole that series put me in. Ironic. But
yes, very ironic, actually.
But anyway, Naruto justifiably gets pissed when this happens, and he breaks out of the chakra rods and unleashes like 6 tails worth of the fox's power, which utterly wrecks Pain. And at first it's awesome if you read the manga, because in the anime it looks awful. Like, you've seen all those meme pictures of Pain with the distorted face going, "My pain is greater than yours," and that's all from this episode. You just watch compilations of this video, and it's like that one weird off-model episode of Gurren Lagann. Like, what the hell happened here?
Yeah.
I mean, Studio Pierrot isn't exactly known for their high-quality animation, but up till now, the animation was at least serviceable. But when Naruto fights Pain, I'm still recalling this compilation video I watched where there's that scene of Pain running on water, and they were doing the feet with wheels things, and the feet as a wheel thing, and they were playing Gotta Go Fast. And basically tries to trap Naruto inside a planet, which is a really badass image. And it just makes Naruto angrier. And he goes like full eight tails, like unleashing the fox with a skeleton on it, which kind of looks like a Bleach ripoff. We'll ignore that for the moment. And it looks like he's about to unleash the ninth tail, which would basically mean he loses control completely.
Yeah, I want to get to that moment for just a second, because basically throughout Shippuden, we do get to see more of the progression of Naruto releasing of the tail beast, because in the first series, we just saw the chakra, and then in the Valley of the End fight, we saw the first tail. Then around the Sasuke retrieval arc, we saw 2 tails, and then eventually would lead up into 4. Just seeing 8 tails with a skeleton, and then almost like really close to like releasing the 9th, you would think that maybe that Naruto trying to protect the village, and he was like really close to releasing the thing that destroyed the village, like in the first chapter of the manga, in the first episode of the anime. And it would have been kind of like an ironic thing, but thankfully it does get stopped by somebody that you would never expect to see in this particular story arc.
Yes, because just before he releases the ninth tail on his mind, he's confronted by a vision of his father, Minato, the fourth Hokage.
Yeah, and when I first saw that, I was, like, shocked. I didn't know what to make of it. At this point in time, I don't think he even knows that that's his father. He just knows him as the fourth Hokage.
Yeah. As cool as this idea is, though, it's an unbelievable coincidence that he managed to get there, because the way they justify it in story is because apparently part of the fourth Hokage's spirit was sealed inside the necklace that was given to Tsunade, which afterwards was given to Naruto. It's an unbelievable coincidence that Naruto just happened to have that necklace thanks to Tsunade.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I don't think he's ever taken it off since, even from the first series. I think he's always worn it.
Yeah, I know, but the thing is, it's really contrived that he would end up with it in the first place, because the necklace was originally given to Tsunade. For all we knew, that's who it was meant for.
Yeah, because I think that the necklace was given to her by her fiancé, Dan, right?
Yeah, and it's a good idea in theory. It's like, what I'm basically reminded of is, because I'm really predictable, is that scene in The Lion King where Simba sees Mufasa's ghost. It's kind of like that. And it was something that the character needed at that time, and I do like the scene by itself. It's just a really big coincidence that he happened to have the necklace so the scene would be possible.
Let's just say that Orochimaru never invaded the Hidden Leaf Village, and the third Hokage never died. And the reason why that Tsunade is in the Hidden Leaf Village in the first place is because, Jiraiya didn't want to become the fifth Hokage. And so that was the mission of gathering up Tsunade while she was going off and spending, thousands of dollars and gambling and drinking sake. And then eventually, she got snapped into her senses to become the fifth Hokage. Let's just say that never happened. So, if this fight were to continue on, because eventually Akatsuki was going to be after Naruto, because they needed the nine-tailed beast, what if they never met, and the fourth Hokage never showed up to stop the seal? Would that mean that scene in which, when it was so close that the nine tails would come out, it actually did, and maybe everybody would be dead?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That the scene is good enough by itself, but at the same... Okay, so after that, Minato helps Naruto seal the fox back in place, and Naruto defeats the last path anyway with a Rasengan. And using the receiver, he's able to track down the person controlling the bodies, who's this ninja called Nagato. So long story short, Nagato was part of a 3-man team that Jiraiya taught long ago. And Yahiko, which was his friend that got killed, which was the body of the Deva path. Mm-hmm. And Conan, who became his assistant. Those were the other two. So basically, Nagato was this sickly kid who just wanted all the fighting to stop after the slaughter of his parents, who were killed by Hidden Leaf Ninja, which actually gives him a bit of justification for what he's doing. And he has his own bullshit eye power called the Rinnegan, and he was able to control the past using those receivers. And then it gets weird, because when Jiraiya was training him, he saw the power of Nagato's Rinnegan, and he started, for some reason, comparing him to a great shinobi sage called the Sage of Six Paths, saying that he was reborn in Nagato. And I'm just sitting here going, what?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't like Avatar, in which, like, there's a whole bunch of reincarnations of the Avatar, and he's meant to save the world. I mean, this one just comes completely out of nowhere, because we are never introduced to, like, this whole story about the Sage of Six Paths, or whatever. It just comes, like, completely out of nowhere. It's like, you are destined for greatness, because you are the reincarnation of this particular sage. It's... what?
It's really meant to build up things that are gonna happen later. According to the Force story, Nagato is supposed to be a messiah figure. This basically triggered Nagato's power because eventually, for story reasons, Yaiko got killed by a member of Anbu, and Nagato was basically forced to kill him. So apparently, Yaiko told Nagato to live because he was destined to save everyone, and this triggered his power. So basically. And after all that build-up, after all his backstory, Naruto really doesn't have a reason that Pain should stop doing what he's doing, except that he believes in what Jiraiya believed in, and therefore he won't kill you. Okay? And then Nagato revives everyone that died, and therefore dies a hero. Except he was the one that killed them in the first place.
Exactly.
And for some reason, he doesn't revive Jiraiya, because why?
I mean, I guess maybe we can make the argument that maybe Jiraiya was already long dead, and these other people died, like, just moments ago, so maybe he can only revive them? I don't know. It doesn't really explain it.
Yeah. The thing is, this part right here is basically going to determine whether or not you end up enjoying the rest of Shippuden. Because we mentioned before how there were a lot of characters that were given this last-minute redemption. Now, a big theme of Naruto is supposedly stopping the cycle of violence. Instead of characters being punished for their actions, a lot of them end up being redeemed. So whether you like the rest of this series or not will basically be determined by your personal philosophy. Do you believe the ends justify the means, no matter how evil they may be, or do you believe in characters facing the consequences of their actions? Now, I'm not saying that every villain should die horribly, but I think they should at least face some form of karmic punishment for killing massive amounts of people. So that's why I don't care for a lot of what's to come. And I know that there are some people who will disagree with that, and that's perfectly fine. It's really kind of impossible to give you an unbiased review, as some people have said. Now, so at the end of the day, it's really going to depend on you whether or not you enjoy this series.
Yeah, that is true. And it's basically like it's up to you whether you think that as we mentioned before about like a person who has been evil built up throughout the series and then at the last minute is redeemed to be not such a bad guy. Does he deserve rightful punishment, or should he be forgiven? It's really tough because, you know, the fact that Pain was able to kill so many people in the Hidden Leaf Village, decimated almost to the ground, and then he decides, oh, I'm going to revive everybody. It's like, oh, are you going to forgive me for that? It's like, but you are essentially the leader of of an organization that their main goal was to destroy villages so you can get paid. And you killed off a bunch of hosts of tailed beasts so you can be able to carry out your goal. So it's very hard to decide on whether you should either hate this character or find him pretty redeemable.
However, one part that I do hate occurs immediately after, because after that, Nagato dies heroically, quote-unquote. So Kakashi brings Naruto back to the village, and he's hailed as a hero. And what is the first thing that Naruto does? He wonders what Sakura is doing. And it's like, Hinata is right there. Like, he doesn't even give her as much as a thank you for what she did. And these two are supposed to be husband and wife in the future.
Which is kind of ironic, yeah.
Naruto.
Oh, man. I mean, yeah, when you think about what happens in the end, it's like, man, what a way to treat people. I mean, again, I'm just going to bring up a filler arc. You remember that, okay, so you remember that one filler arc in which, like, you had Naruto, Kiba, and Hinata going off into a mission, and Hinata makes him, like, this little cake, and when she eats it, when Naruto eats it, and he says to her, Hinata, this is really good, you'll make a really good wife someday, and she blushes, and basically giving her, like, a really nice compliment. So what you're trying to tell me is that something from the filler was able to give Naruto a compliment to Hinata, but in actual canon, the fact that Hinata saved his life, oh my god, just, I mean, what did Sakura do exactly that made you wonder where she was at? Now, if she was part of the fight, and, you know, maybe there was, like, something where maybe her and Naruto were fighting together, and maybe he had to go off separately while she was fighting off, some more bodies with, you know, more, of Pain's bodies, then, okay, I can see that. But, no, that never actually happens.
It's really frustrating, especially other than the last Naruto movie, which basically exists for the author to be like, no, they really were meant to be together. Other than that, the only canon moment that these two share together is the scene where Hinata comforts Naruto after Neji dies.
Right.
You should be comforting her! He's her cousin! Just, what the hell? Now, if you're going to argue that Naruto is stupid, he is. But even if someone as stupid as him would get the point by now. Even by logic of positive versus negative reinforcement, Sakura has said multiple times that she hates Naruto, constantly beats him up for comedy's sake, whereas Hinata has done nothing but be nice to him and just nearly died to save his life. I think even the dumbest person would know to go to the nice one by this point.
Yeah, like, for example, do you remember in the tuning exam in which Hinata and Neji had their fight, and Neji won the fight against Hinata, and Naruto was really concerned for Hinata, and he was challenging Neji to a fight, and then when Neji was revealing the backstory in the tuning exam finals, and Naruto wanted to fight off against him for Hinata, and it's like, where's that? Where is that in this story? Because it needs to be shown. It's needed at this point.
And if you're going to say that Naruto isn't a romance story, well, if you're going to have the characters end up together, there should at least be an in-story reason why they do. There's just...
I mean, please do not do it just for the sake of fan fictions that I want to pair these two characters together and make it canon.
I mean, okay, back in the original days of this story, I was a Naruhina shipper because I was a sucker for the underdog romance because they seemed like they would be cute together. But at the same time, then just doing it because that's what the shippers want. Well, we're grateful for that, but the thing is, we need there to be a reason why you're doing it. There is so much wrong with these two's relationship, and
you know what? It gets even worse when you look at Boruto. My God, does it get worse?
It says a lot that it turns out that Sasuke and Sakura's kid, who has a deadbeat dad, turned out to be a better kid than Boruto did.
Yeah, that's true. And you could kind of argue that, but, you know, he's never around. He's always busy. And so he needs to have a father figure in his life. And, yeah, but he doesn't have to come across as, you know, this incredibly annoying and just self-centered.
He has shadow clones. He can literally be anywhere he wants. And even if you're going to argue it's not really him, he's still controlling it.
I mean, to be fair, you know, that one scene in Boruto in which when it's Himawari's birthday party and, you know, Naruto is about to serve the cake and then the shadow clone just dissipates and the cake drops and Boruto is really upset. That's actually a really genuinely heartbreaking moment. I can fall for something like that. But all the other times in which he's really busy in the office, or maybe when Boruto's causing trouble so that he can get attention from his dad, okay, that's when it starts getting really irritating.
Yeah, that workaholic dad cliche is something that should have died with the 90s, because in this economy especially, it's pretty much impossible to have a family where both parents don't work.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people already know about the whole, Japanese overworking syndrome, in which men would work for 20 hours every single day and basically just come home exhausted, almost never seeing their families and working hard and, to support them. This is why a lot of people in Japan don't want to have families, because of all the work that they have to do to support them. This is exactly what's going on in Japan, and at the same time, the way it's been done in Boruto, it just makes you even more frustrated.
Yeah, like, there's a reason that the writers of Sanrio made a Gretsuko, which is a really good series, by the way. I would recommend that.
I've been hearing a lot about it, and it's caught the internet by storm.
It really is. It's very funny, but it also hits you really close to home because of how relatable it is. And the thing that, we spent a lot of time talking about Boruto, so let's go back to Shippuden real quick.
Yeah. But before, I just want to bring up one more thing. So, the fact that, we had, the last Naruto movie shows off the wedding, and a lot of people were complaining about that in the 500 episode, we never see that. And you would think that at this point, with everything that's been going on, that they would have this, really strong, wonderful relationship with one another, and then when you see, how it happens in Boruto, in which, Hinata's almost pretty much neglected and just there to raise her kids, and it just becomes, really sad, and you just kind of feel really sorry for her, because you know of how much of a capable ninja she is. But throughout the entire run of Naruto, Hinata was always perceived as, she's the first child of the Hyuga clan that is from the main branch, and she's supposed to be the strong one. She's supposed to carry out the legacy, but she's weak, compared to her younger sister, in which she's a lot more stronger. So you would think that maybe there would be this build-up, similar to how with Naruto, in which he was the lowest in his class, and he wanted to become Kage so he can prove to everyone that he's not weak and that he shouldn't be neglected. That could have been a build-up to a fantastic relationship. Someone who has no family, but then you have somebody who is from a huge family that is really low of everybody's expectations. That could have been something so amazing.
Yeah, maybe it was just the romantic in me, but I was really rooting for those two crazy kids to get together and live a happy life in the end. But not like this. No. Not like this.
No.
And okay.
Continuing. Let's get back to Shippuden.
All right. So instead of what we want to happen, we proceed directly to the 5 Kage Summit arc, where the leaders of the 5 different lands convene to discuss what to do about the Sasuke problem. Given that they think he murdered the Raikage's brother, and even though I couldn't give less of a shit about any of the Kages except for the Raikage, his name is A, and that A stands for awesome, because he uses a fighting style that combines great physical strength with lightning, and the first thing he does when Naruto shows up to beg them to stop hunting Sasuke is to berate him for defending a criminal.
Yeah, which is very, very justified, because he thinks that Sasuke killed his brother, and he's like, you're defending him? We're on your side, and we want to stop this guy once and for all, right before he kills everybody, which is what Sasuke wants to do. And Naruto thinks that, he has some good in him.
But
he's my
friendship, friend. Lol.
Friendship, lol.
Is the anime trying to say that he's in the wrong? Because he's not. So while that happens, Danzo is also the leader of the Anbu, Danzo. Sorry, the leader of the Anbu, Danzo.
Oh yeah, remember him? Because I didn't.
No, because he thinks he can restore his injured arm and eye, and said eye turns out to be a Sharingan eye, because of course it does. But basically, Sasuke and his team attack the 5 Kages because the smart thing to do is to attack the 5 strongest ninja in the world with the full frontal assault. And surprisingly, Sasuke loses.
Really?
It's almost like it was a bad idea.
Oh, wow. So essentially, he just tried to take down the 5 strongest ninja in the entire world, thinking that he can be able to do it by himself, but he loses? No!
It's so satisfying to see Sasuke Sasuke finally being told that he was for once too cocky. Like, they're just, like, and then Toby shows up to save them, and this is where it gets stupid. So, according to Toby, the tailed beasts are all fractions of another great beast called the ten-tailed beast, which was never previously established, and the moon is its corpse. So, once Toby resurrects this beast by reuniting the other beasts with it, somehow, he will reflect his own bullshit eye power, the infinite Tsukuyomi, off the moon, and trap everyone inside an illusion that they can't escape from. No war, no free will, nothing. Yes, as War of Time said, he is going to use the moon as a projector for his PowerPoint of doom.
That's amazing, his PowerPoint of doom.
While the moon is visible everywhere on Earth, what happens if people don't look at it? Does your jutsu have like an infinite casting window?
Also,
if someone's not
I'm actually
looking at
curious.
the moon when it's going on, you're screwed.
Yeah, and also I'm curious about, what about daytime? Does daytime happen? If that's the case, does that mean that the sun has the infinite Tsukuyomi?
Well, the moon's still visible in the sky during the day, so...
Not as strong, though.
But what's even worse is, they'll know not to look at it because he literally just told them what his plan was. At least in Aizen's case, he lied about what he was doing a lot of the time. But no, Toby literally tells them what he's doing, hoping they'll surrender, and they don't, which they don't. Now all they've done is tell them exactly what they're going to do, so they know exactly how to stop him.
And you know what the sad part about this is? Is that they still fall for the infamous Tsukuyomi. They still look at it. It's, you know, in Avatar: The Last Airbender, where they actually know that the comet is on its way and that there's going to be a solar eclipse. Instead of, we're just going to surrender to the Fire Nation and, you know, just wait for them to conquer us, even though they won't be having their fire, they actually planned ahead, knowing that even though that the solar eclipse wasn't going to last for very long, they were still going to fight. So, I mean, they could have done something to, like, not see the moon. Couldn't they have, like, I don't know, like, some way to block it? Like, maybe seal their windows? Or maybe when they have to go outside and do a mission, maybe they have to wear, like, special sunglasses or something? I don't know.
Or just don't look up at the moon. Because they know it's coming. If his plan is so foolproof, why didn't he just do it? Instead of giving the heroes every possible chance to stop him. And look, I know that this is a cliche as old as time, when the villain loses because of his own hubris. But even in Pain's case, Jiraiya and the other shinobi had to put it together that Pain's body wasn't his real body. So the Kages predictably don't surrender when this happens, so Toby declares this to be the 4th Great Shinobi War, which, why does he have the authority to name wars, but whatever. Well, anyway, Killer Bee decides to escape his duties as a guardian of Hidden Cloud and escapes, but Kisame finds him, and we finally get to see him fight. And this fight is actually pretty good, too.
I actually like this fight, especially since the fact that the last time that we saw Kisame was, like, from a while ago when he was fighting off against Guy. And, you know, it's really cool to see not only the Raikage fight, but to also see Kisame fight, because he doesn't really get that kind of attention compared to Itachi.
It's really all worth it for when Ace shows up at the end to help his brother, and the two decapitate Kisame with a double lariat. That's just hilariously awesome. Just like I said in the review, some anime jump the shark, Naruto punches it.
And decapitates it, too.
It's followed by some less awesome content, so... Basically, Naruto's trying to track down Sasuke using Sage Mode, but Sakura's group finds him, and Sakura confesses her love to Naruto.
Which is a lie. Of course it is.
It's just like that. I immediately found a Why You Always Lying video for that. But even Naruto knows this is a lie, which kind of pokes holes in the idea that he was too stupid to realize how he not have felt about him. But basically, Sakura is trying to use his feelings to try and stop him from going after Sasuke. But Naruto knows full well that she's still in love with him, so why are you pursuing her? But just see. So Sakura goes to kill Sasuke because she thinks that she loves him so much she would rather end him than see him be the cause of the next world war, which, yeah, good luck with that. It's really hard to argue with the idea that someone should kill Sasuke at this point, but Sakura is not the person to do it.
No, I mean, there's not enough proof that she can be able to do it without freezing and, you know, like, still have the strong feelings of, you know, wanting to be with Sasuke. She's not capable of that. She hasn't let go of, you know, wanting to get Sasuke to the point at which she wants to defeat him.
Oh, and somewhere in there, Sasuke fights Danzo, who has a bunch of Sharingan eyes grafted into his arm somehow.
How?
Like, how do you connect the optic nerves? There's no reason that those should still be working, but just... And it doesn't matter, because Sasuke just proves that his bullshit eye power is greater than Danzo's bullshit eye power, and he kills him.
Like, wait, whose Sharingan eyes do those belong to?
I believe it's stated that he betrayed some members of the Uchiha clan in order to get where he was, basically. And so,
I mean, if that's the case, if we can count like all those eyes, he must have killed at least like a dozen.
I guess Itachi had help then, just because otherwise, how did he get those eyes?
Exactly, like how did he get those eyes?
Creepers, right? Where'd you get those peepers? Eventually, this leads to Naruto and Sasuke fighting for like the 50th time. It doesn't really lead to anything, except it was established earlier that if two fighters clash at their strongest, then they can immediately understand what the other is thinking.
Which we kind of already gotten in the Valley of the End, which this kind of makes that battle kind of moot.
But either way, it's saying that is what happens, and Naruto knows that it's his destiny to stop Sasuke, which doesn't really lead to anything.
No.
But it's a good thing because at this point Tsunade awakens from her coma because she was actually helping out the villagers during the invasion, and she healed people so much that it put a huge strain on her body, and she basically ended up in a coma from it. They thought she was going to die briefly, and that's eventually why Kakashi becomes the next Hokage.
Yeah.
So anyway. Now, then, at this point, Kabuto returns, because at this point we'd all forgotten about him. He's absorbed pretty much all of Orochimaru's power at this point. The Kage decided the best thing to do is to keep the remaining Jinchuriki, the tailed beast users, away from Tobi. So Naruto goes to train with Killer Bee to properly control the Kyuubi. So he proves himself, and they go off to train together. And this leads to another meeting with Naruto's relative in his mind, which is his mother, Kushina.
Yes.
And this actually does make more sense because the seal that was made to seal away the Kyuubi was actually made from part of the scar from the umbilical cord when Naruto was born. And it was also stated in the series before that Kushina had a very strong ability of sealing magic, even when she was alive. And the two do share a pretty sweet moment together.
If there's one thing that I can talk about, I actually do love the meeting with Naruto and his mother, because the first time that they meet up, she's Naruto's wondering about who she is, and then then she kind of like loses her temper and like punches him, and then she has kind of like a little catchphrase that she also says, and then Naruto immediately knows who she is, and without saying anything, he goes up and hugs her, and that moment really struck me. And then they start talking to one another. We get to know more about Kushina's backstory and about how she was, basically made fun of because of her red hair, and she was called Tomato, and then she became like really angry, and she had this severe temper and started beating up her classmates, and she became known as the red hot-blooded habanero. And the only person who really saw her as like a really good person was Minato. And, this was like the time in which when, there was a whole bunch of shinobi who wanted to kidnap her, and Minato went over and saved her, and they had this really good relationship with one another. And then we learn about how, she was part of the Uzumaki clan, and that clan, is kind of like distant relatives over with the Senju clan, because her family member was, the wife of the first Hokage, who actually did hold the nine-tailed fox as well, which actually kind of makes me wonder, in some kind of weird way, are Naruto and Tsunade distant relatives?
It's sort of like that. The ninja clans are pretty vast, so it's definitely a distant relation. But yeah, they do have some ancestry in common.
Yeah, because the Uzumaki clan, the first Hokage's wife was an Uzumaki, and so because of that continuous heritage, and with Naruto being that, I guess in a weird way they are, somewhat related, very distant, but they are, which, it kind of makes a little bit of sense. And apparently, like, the Uzumaki clan, like, they're known for having, like, large amounts of chakra, which actually makes a lot of sense for Naruto's case, because he already had a large amount of chakra, even without the nine-tailed fox, getting his power so he can be able to use his techniques.
And the moment the two have to reunite, because Naruto really, he never knew either of his parents, but the moment that he has with his mother is pretty sweet, and it is pretty cool that she ends up actually briefly sealing away the Kyuubi briefly for a more extended period of time, and it's pretty cool. Parts of it do come off as a bit incesty, though. But anyway, they reseal the fox inside a new seal, which the fox notes resembles that of the Sage of Six Paths, which again will come up later. So, however, Kisame is still alive because he put his consciousness inside of his own sword. But then Guy shows up and he starts kicking his ass. So. And again, they do that thing where they try to give Kisame some last-minute character redemption through a flashback and have him commit suicide. He still gives away the information to Toby where the Jinchuriki are, so that redemption really kind of failed.
Yeah.
And then, in a brief aside, Toby just kind of kills Tonen because she was a loose end, I guess.
Which is kind of a letdown, because that was his long-time friend, and basically, I need to kill you so I can be able to accomplish more of my goal. Yeah.
Anyway, the reason that Toby went to Hidden Rain in the first place was to retrieve Nagato's left eye. So, thanks to Kabuto, he now has both the Sharingan and the Rinnegan. And this begins what would be pretty much the final arc of the series, the fourth Shinobi War arc, because this goes on for pretty much the entire last third of the series, and it'd take forever for us to sum up everything here, because basically it's one long series of fights. It has several good moments that we could bring up, like Gaara versus his ancestor, which I actually liked, but then, of course, they have to bring back Zabuza and Haku because they were popular, but they barely do anything. And
I was really disappointed, too, because not only did they bring Zabuza and Haku back, but they also featured the family that they were helping in the first arc, and they showed them, like, years later helping out Naruto and Sakura during a scene. And you would think that, maybe Zabuza and Haku can be able to help out in some way. Like, no, it kind of, like, just reveals, it just comes to a point in which it's nothing more than just a cameo.
So this basically starts a huge war arc where basically pretty much every villain that died comes back. Now Toby has the ability to bring back the dead ninja using the impure world reincarnation technique that Orochimaru used. And this leads to several fights with students having to fight their old masters, like Asuma's team has to destroy him, which is a little sad, I'll admit. But what's more important here is that during half of the fight, the allied shinobi somehow keep it a secret from Naruto that there's a war going on, which, okay, they're off on an isolated island, but you'd think word would reach him somehow. Anyway, Naruto starts gaining the ability to fuse the Kyuubi's chakra with his own. And that's basically when he starts to unlock basically a second Sage mode, because he has the fox inside him. And it's a cool idea. At this point, when with all of the various fights going on, it's kind of hard to care.
It's hard to keep up because there's a lot of things going on, and I do like the design. It has like this gold tint color, and it does look really cool, but with everything that's been going on, it just, like, the impact should have been a lot stronger, but the fact that there's a war going on, and all of these previously dead ninjas are back, and they're fighting off against either their pupils or their siblings or what have you, it just kind of, like, loses it.
Yeah. And then, somehow in the middle of all this, Itachi manages to use his ability to break free of Kabuto's control despite being a zombie, because shut up. And then Toby reveals his secret trump card, the real Madara Uchiha. And then it's like, what? But I thought Toby was Madara, said no one. But this turns out to be a double-edged sword, because for obvious reasons, the Kyuubi hates Madara, so now it's helping out Naruto of its own free will, because it'd rather do that than be controlled by him again. So the other shinobi forces battle Madara, so Naruto, Killer Bee, and eventually Kakashi and Guy team up to battle Toby, who's turned dead Jinchuriki into his new 6 paths of pain, complete with tailed beast forms. Which you'd think would be cool, but they're really just cannon fodder.
It's a real disappointment to know about that.
Yeah, and then, but one thing that I did think was kind of cool is that at this point, now, because Naruto's gotten to know the Kyuubi a bit better, he starts trying to help the other tailed beasts get unsealed from their hosts. And because he's actually reaching out to him, this impresses the fox enough so that it actually wants to fight with him. And we finally learn that its real name is Kurama.
Yeah. Which
just makes me think of Yu Yu Hakusho.
Yes, I was just about to say that.
Yeah, the ensuing fight is pretty cool, because it's basically a huge kaiju battle with all of the tailed beasts. And Naruto finally frees the Jinchuriki from Toby's control, and that surprises even Toby, because basically he wasn't supposed to be able to do that. So the Kages take on Madara, who targets Tsunade once he learns that she's a Senju. He even calls her a weak woman not worthy of the name, to which she responds accordingly by unleashing a new technique that makes her slower, but even stronger than the Raikage, and really beats his ass, which is really satisfying, except it doesn't stick.
Yeah, that's really a shame.
That's one of the reasons why I like her. So while all this is going on, Sasuke catches up with zombie Itachi, saying that he wants to talk with him, but Itachi says that he needs to discover the secret of the jutsu, and to find Kabuto and fight with him, which in theory is cool because Kabuto's unlocked Sage Mode thanks to Orochimaru, but knowing the two's backstory, it's still a bit hollow. And this is when Kabuto says that the extremely mimetic line, "I finally have Orochimaru inside of me."
That can come across as so many things.
Just, wow. I mean, so eventually Itachi finally forces Kabuto to undo the jutsu, and even though he says he forgives Konoha for everything they did, Sasuke's still whining like, "No, I want revenge! I want to destroy everyone!" And I'm like, your brother literally came back from the dead to save you. At this point, why not listen to him?
You know what? I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that Itachi did redeem himself right before he died, and then he told Sasuke, "Listen to me," then I would believe that Sasuke would not listen to Itachi. But nope. Apparently, we had to have that whole thing going on, and then, Sasuke is, like, disappointed that he can't kill anybody. It's like that scene in The Terminator in which, like, the Terminator wants to kill people, and then John Connor tells him, "You must swear that you will not kill anybody." And he promises not to, but Yeah, just seeing Sasuke whining and complaining that he can't kill anybody from the Hidden Leaf Village is, like, it's pretty hilarious looking back on it.
And apparently this stops the jutsu controlling Madara, except it doesn't because because Chiha just, I don't know. And so after Itachi's sacrifice, Team Heavy, or Taka as they're known now, does their one major contribution to the story and gives Sasuke the material he needs to revive Orochimaru.
So basically they're just there to help Sasuke, resurrect somebody that they wanted to have him dead in the first place because they were experimented on by Orochimaru. So basically just resurrect the guy who pretty much made your lives miserable in the first place.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Okay. But instead of that, we cut back to Naruto's group and their fight with Toby, and they learn the secret of his intangibility, which I spoiled already, and they reveal that Toby was Obito all along. So basically, we finally get the reveal of what happened to Obito after the cave-in. He was rescued by Madara, who repaired him, though he had to amputate his arm and use parts from a Zetsu to repair him, which we'll get back to later. And Zetsu told him that there was a war going on outside their cave once, only to see Kakashi seemingly stabbing their other teammate, Rin, to death.
Yeah.
Which he kind of did, but there was a whole different context for it, because basically Rin was forced into becoming a Jinchuriki, and she ran into Kakashi's attack because she didn't want to become a human WMD for another village.
Right.
So, basically, why Kakashi doesn't choose to try and tell Obito this, I don't know, but Obito later reveals that he knew anyway.
Which kind of makes his anger and revenge on Kakashi pretty much pointless.
Yep.
Although the one thing that I can say about this particular fight with Obito and Kakashi was that the one thing that I actually did find kind of cool was that he was put into like some sort of illusion, and Kakashi reunites with his father, and they talk about the regrets that the father had in terms of like being away from his son for so long, because Kakashi knew about his father being like a legendary ninja, and he sort of resented him, and so it was kind of nice to see them kind of make up.
Despite their best efforts, the ten-tailed beast is revived. But it seems to be too powerful for even Madara and Obito to control completely, but its sheer destructive power means that all of the shinobi forces have to unite against it. So at this point, Neji sacrifices his life to interrupt an attack meant for Naruto, though I think this would have meant more had Neji actually had a bigger role in Shippuden up to this point. I think that by this time, audience members had justifiably forgotten Naruto's fight with Neji during the Chunin exams, because this was almost a decade ago at this point.
Yeah, so, and also they could have probably forgot about the fact that Neji was with Naruto during the Sasuke retrieval arc.
Right.
And the last time that we saw Neji like play a major role was during the Gaara retrieval arc, which was the very first arc in Naruto Shippuden.
Yeah, which brings back the whole thing that the manga ended in 2014, but the anime ended in 2017. It's just ridiculous the amount of filler content that it had. I mean, compared to other series, it's not that much, but ratio-wise, One Piece has basically the same amount of episodes of filler that Shippuden has, but it's a little more justified because at this point, One Piece has like 1,000 episodes or close to it. So 200 out of 1,000 is a lot less percentage-wise than 200 out of 500.
Right, exactly.
So, anyway, so like I said, Hinata was the one that snapped Naruto out of his breathing for Neji, which really should have been the other way around. I know that's a little sexist, but she's the one who was closest to Neji in this situation. So why wasn't it the other way? I still don't get that.
Yeah, anyway. And you know what? I mean, it would have been a really nice way that maybe Neji could have spoken to Hinata right before he died about, maybe like a bit of forgiveness, like, because remember in the first anime, Neji hated Hinata for being in the main branch clan of the Hyuga clan, and he wanted, and because he was like part of the side branch, which was like the lower member of the Hyuga clan, and you had that fight in the Chunin exam, and you didn't really get to see them like mingle with one another except in filler. So it would have been nice if maybe we would have had a scene in which maybe Neji and Hinata would have had like a final moment of forgiveness, but we never really get that.
So with Lee's help, which is actually really cool, they actually break through the tendrils connecting Madara and Obito to the Ten Tails, which means that they're no longer controlling it and that it's free, but they're no longer controlling it, so that's a good thing. So Orochimaru comes back, revives 4 of the previous Kage to basically tell Sasuke what we already knew about Hashirama and Madara. And Sasuke changes his mind and says that he'll fight for what Itachi believed in. Which, at this point, dude, pick a side and stick with it. Just, there's almost no reason to trust Sasuke at this point because his alliances switch more often than the characters in Pirates of the Caribbean 3.
Yeah. I mean, and it also goes to the point in which now we went from somebody who wanted to have revenge on his brother, somebody who wanted to kill everybody, somebody who wanted to destroy the Hidden Leaf Village, and now somebody who's like, I want to do what my brother did, in which I'm going to protect the village from harm, even though that he killed my family. And then, like, later on, he even reveals to Naruto that he wants to become the next Hokage, which is like, are you serious?
I don't know anybody who knows anybody who actually likes Sasuke Uchiha, other than his voice actor, and I think he's a little bit biased, honestly. But really, is there any manga fan out there who actually does like Sasuke as a character? I genuinely want to know.
Yeah, please leave us in the comments if you are one of those people who genuinely like Sasuke. And I'm not talking about, like, people who cosplay as Sasuke, maybe because of his design, because I knew somebody from college who did that, but I'm talking about, like, who really enjoyed his character arc and his personality and who he became later on. I'm actually curious.
So at this point, the remaining shinobi are joined by Sasuke and the reincarnated Kage to fight the Ten-Tailed Beast. And so at this point is when, like I said, Sakura and Sasuke actually do some things that make them a bit useful, because Sakura actually even holds her own against some of the Ten-Tailed Beast clones, which is pretty respectable for a ninja of her power level. And even Karin helps restore Tsunade so she can use Katsuyu to help heal the other shinobi. So, back in the other dimension, Kakashi is unable to get through to Obito, who returns them to our dimension, where Madara tries to control Obito into returning him to life using the rods he implanted in his artificial arm. Because of course he did that.
Yeah.
Anyway, Obito resists this, though, and instead of Madara, he ends up becoming the Ten-Tails new Jinchuriki. And he takes on his own Ten-Tailed Beast mode, which looks really silly. There's flaps of skin hanging off his shoulder. Just, okay. I know it's meant to look like the robe of the Sage of Six Paths, but it looks kind of ridiculous when you try to make that organic. But anyway, so the army of allied shinobi start attacking him. It looks like it's not doing anything. He goes through with his Eye of the Moon plan and summons the Ten-Tailed Beast tree form, which it has. I don't know. It's not really explained very well.
I mean, for a second, I thought it was, like, trying to be, like, Secret of Mana, in which, like, here's a tree. It has all the powers in the world. Okay?
And the roots of the tree start capturing shinobi and fatally draining them of their chakra. And a pretty horrific scene, because some red shirts get, like, completely drained of their life right before our eyes. So
yeah, this kind of reminds me of when Cell was just first featured in Dragon Ball Z, and he's, like, sucking the lives of all the citizens until, like, their clothes disappear.
So finally, Naruto uses his technique to cover the Konoha 11 and Tailed Beast cloaks, and using them, he pulls the other Tailed Beast chakra out of the Ten Tails. And and the whole time he's doing this, Naruto's trying to tell Obito that it doesn't have to be this way. He started out as someone with dreams too, and I like this better when it was him talking to Gaara, but finally, the Ten Tails is extracted and the other Tailed Beasts are free. So Obito tries to use Nagato's revival technique to revive everyone who died, because he's suddenly a good guy now. again, after all that. But because parts of his Zetsu were used to make him, Zetsu is able to take over his body and forces him to use that technique to revive Madara instead. Which, given what he's about to do, I don't really know why. But anyway, he stabs Sasuke and Naruto, but we both know they're not dead, and eventually retakes control over the Ten Tails and becomes its new Jinchuriki. So, Obito and Kakashi, as well as Kabuto, who escaped the illusion once he realized that he wanted to be a good guy too, because sure, why not, starts doing what they can to revive the two. However, we got another surprise character gets to do something moment, because it's Guy who steps in to fight off Madara while they do this. So he knows that the only way he can possibly hope to stand up to him is to open up all 8 of the inner gates, meaning that even if he wins, he'll die. And he basically goes Super Saiyan. But the power does allow him to kick Madara's ass pretty effectively. And it would be pretty poignant if he actually did end up dying after this, but he doesn't, because Deus Ex Machina. But anyway, Naruto and Sasuke suddenly find themselves face to face with the mysterious Sage of Six Paths, because, I'm not making this up, apparently, Naruto and Sasuke are the reincarnation of the Sage's 2 sons, who are destined to inherit their legacy.
Oh my god, just what?
Because, once again, because it's okay if people say you're not destined for greatness, as long as you were destined for greatness all along.
Yay.
Naruto and his 2 teammates, although notice that Sakura wasn't the reincarnation of anyone, have been everything from new versions of the 3 Sannin, the 4th Hokage, Hashirama and Madara, and now the reincarnations of 2 great sages. So, to people who actually do like this series, I have to ask, at what point do you say this is getting ridiculous? How many great things can one person be destined for in one lifetime?
Yeah, I mean, pretty soon we're going to be having the reveal of, Naruto at this point in time is going to be destined to, help save the world, and Sasuke is going to find the cure for cancer. So, I don't know. But yeah, it does kind of diminish the whole fact that, they had major struggles that they needed to accomplish, and everything was just put against them. And that made us relate to these characters a lot. The fact that, Sasuke's family was dead and he wanted to get revenge on his brother. And then you have Naruto, who has no family, and he was pretty much cited as an outcast. But the fact that now it's basically saying that, oh, you are the reincarnation of somebody great, it just kind of ruins it. Now, I mean, it's kind of similar to, I mean, I can understand the justifications of when Seto Kaiba and Yugi were the reincarnations of the Pharaoh and Set, who turns out to be his loyal servant. It's kind of ridiculous, but that does kind of make a lot of sense. But here, it's just
it's only one thing too.
Yeah, it's just only one thing. It's not you are also, you're gonna be, following in the footsteps of a great duelist who dueled, somebody who was so strong that he was
They're also the reincarnations of 2 princes of Atlantis for some reason.
Right, so, yeah, but the point is that, enough is enough. We already know that they're destined for great things, even before we all knew about this whole, crap about them being the reincarnation of some sage master, whatever. It's just stop.
Well, regardless, the sage gives Naruto and Sasuke their new powers, which somehow gives Sasuke the Rinnegan, because why not? And Naruto uses it to keep Guy from dying, and they think that the best way to stop this plan is to separate Madara from his Rinnegan. But despite their best efforts, Madara is able to put Tobi's plan into action, casting Infinite Tsukiyomi at the moon, which everyone falls for, despite the fact that they know it's coming. So, basically, except for Team 7 and the reincarnated Kage, because Team 7 was protected by Sasuke's jutsu, then they basically get trapped in an illusion from which there is no escape. And this is where a lot of the filler art near the end came in, because they were all trapped in illusion, so we can do whatever we want, derp-de-doo. So basically, before Madara can assume control of the world, he literally gets stabbed in the back by Obito's body, which was possessed by Black Zetsu. Because you see, Zetsu, all along, was the servant of the true final boss of the series, Kaguya.
Who?
Good question. Okay. So apparently she's like this goddess figure who was the mother of all chakra, and she's also the rabbit that's in the moon, because that's what the shadow on the moon looks like. But basically, Zetsu says that the ninja who were trapped inside the infinite Tsukuyomi will be reborn as White Zetsu for Kaguya's army. So Obito has another moment of redemption in which he gives Kakashi his Sharingan from beyond the grave, because why not? But really, it's okay. You have this huge long-ass arc with the Fourth Shinobi War, and again, you can understand that it took a long time for Obito and Madara to be defeated, because they're like one of the big bads of the series. But after all that, you suddenly introduce this new character, which was barely foreshadowed, and they're basically like, we're fighting God now. Just
yeah, it just comes like right out of nowhere. It definitely reminds me of Final Fantasy, in which like you're fighting off against like this villain that has been around throughout the entire game, but then it turns out, oh, there's a final boss that you have to fight that was never mentioned anywhere in the story. Where did this come from? And even the way that this character is defeated is just downright stupid.
And she's supposed to be this big, powerful, goddess-like figure, but she really sucks at it, because she has the power to teleport our heroes to anywhere she chooses. She has a dimension made of pure acid, and she doesn't teleport them to that immediately. Instead of teleporting them there, she gets distracted long enough by Naruto's reverse harem jutsu to get attacked.
I was like pretty much done when I first saw that. It's like, you're trying to tell me that essentially a god who can teleport anybody to anywhere they want to defeat them, and who is the true villain of the entire series, is taken off by a perverted jutsu we saw as a joke in the first episode. Okay.
Like, there's a reason that jutsu was kept out of the more serious fights in this series. It's impossible to care about this fight after that, because there's no way you can take it seriously. But eventually, Team 7 used the seal the Sage of Six Paths gave them by touching her at the same time from all three sides. Just they seal away Kaguya for good instead of actually killing her, because that went so well the first time. And Kaguya goes, no, and dies, and everyone who is dead re-dies, except Orochimaru, because reasons. But
reasons.
But of course, even after all that, it's not over.
No, even all that build-up to the Fourth Shinobi War, it's like, hey, we have one more thing we need to do. We have unfinished business.
It's just, I'm reminded of that scene in Austin Powers. Why won't you die? Alright. So, it turns out that apparently Sasuke decides that feels like betraying everyone again, because I guess it's a day that ends in Y. But while they're trapped inside this magic tree, Sasuke is going to kill the Kages while they're trapped, so he can start a revolution after he takes control of the tailed beasts. Pick a damn side and stick with it. At this point, any redemption that Sasuke gets in the end is completely unbelievable, because we know he could become a bad guy again the instant somebody snaps their fingers wrong. So, literally the only reason this happened is because the writer knew he couldn't end this story without a fight between Naruto and Sasuke. But at this point, could any fight be satisfying?
No.
It isn't. Both of them lose their arms while the statues of Hashirama and Madara fall over them in a gesture of friendship, because symbolism! Because the best kind of friends are the ones that constantly betray you. Or at least apparently Naruto thinks so, because Sasuke, who chose not to get his arm back for some point because they can graft it back on, chooses to wander the world after receiving a full pardon at Naruto's urging. Yep, he doesn't even go to jail after all the crap he did. At least Aizen got sent to jail. And it's still not over. The manga had several sequels. We already know about Boruto, but between those two manga, there were several light novels and more manga. And the anime, of course, has the last Naruto movie, which, by the way, you gotta love that title. It's like the creators were trying to assure the audience that, yes, there will be no more after this.
Yeah, it's like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street. It's like, this is the last one. We're never gonna have any more after this. Yeah, right.
Like how that Final Destination movie was called The Final Destination, and then there was another one.
Yeah.
So, alright. So the anime concludes with 3 new sagas that weren't in the manga. But unlike filler, these sagas are somewhat canon because they're actually scrapped movies. Apparently, despite them being fully finished, the creators couldn't get the movies released as movies, so they just stuck them on at the end of the anime. Probably so they could pad it out to a full 500 episodes.
Yeah, and to be fair, at least they are justified and, they actually do build up more of the story from the first series. So we do get to see, like, a brand new perspective, kind of like in Pokemon Chronicles, in which we do get to see the perspective of the other characters. So I at least appreciate that. But, like, sticking it all the way towards the end of a sequel series, why didn't they have this in the original?
Okay, we already mentioned the whole hijinks that ensue before Naruto's wedding to Hinata, which is the last arc, and then before that there was an arc where Shikamaru goes on a mission, and then there was one where Sasuke and Orochimaru go on a mission to stop a plague of exploding humans, yes, like in South Park, and just like these arcs have their moments, but honestly, it's really hard to care because again, the last several arcs of this manga dragged on, and it's really difficult to keep going at that point, especially at the end with that bullshit with Kaguya, which honestly nobody cared about. Even the people who love this series didn't like that arc. It ends not with a bang, but with a whimper.
Unless you've seen the last Naruto movie, and you saw the OVA where he becomes the Hokage. But as for a standalone episode, yeah, it just pretty much, peters out.
The worst part of Shippuden is that it had so much potential. The first Naruto series, there are several moments that I go back to even now, and I say that and I will still stand by them as great moments. And Shippuden still has those too, but they're fewer and more far between. A lot of arcs end anticlimactically, which may suit the theme of the series, but it takes you how many episodes to get to and I instantly forgive you. And then the fourth Shinobi War that basically hijacks the series until the end of it. I feel like I did when I was done making the Shippuden review all over again, because the last few arcs of Shippuden really take a lot out of you if you go through them all at once. The pacing is terrible in this, especially near the end of this series. And anything that the first series did, it does not justify the lengths that Shippuden sinks to.
It just makes it, not worth it, because you would think that it would be with Dragon Ball to Dragon Ball Z, in which, it was a huge improvement over, the original in action and in storytelling and in character arcs. But no, it just becomes... there's just so much potential that could have been had, like we discussed about earlier in the podcast, but all of it just boils down to the fact that there are a lot, some characters get a lot more recognition than others. There's a lot of plots that pretty much either go nowhere or go in absolute insane directions. And at this point in time, you just don't care. The moments that should have been really important, they either end up disappointingly, or you just don't care because it's just been going on for so long. So it just ends up being a massive letdown.
Yeah, and This franchise has been going on for nearly 20 years at this point. It's been 15 years since the manga began. But at this point, it really feels like that the original series, there are moments that I can still come back to and say how great they are and mean it. But in Shippuden's case, it feels like I, and probably quite a few members of the audience, there are people who have been watching this series from the beginning when they were kids. And I was one of those people. But at a certain point, you start to wonder if maybe you grew up, but the stuff that you watched as a kid really didn't. It really took away my motivation to continue pursuing this franchise. I said that I had no motivation to check out Boruto after this, but eventually, due to listening to a manga podcast and stuff like that, I started sort of following it, not as avidly as I used to, obviously. And Boruto has good moments, and there are legitimately good things about it. There are legitimately good things about Shippuden. You know how they say that the things you remember from childhood are never as good as you remember them? Well, looking back on Naruto, even now, as someone who grew up with the series, Shippuden is definitely its weakest point.
Yeah, Shippuden is definitely, like, the point in which, like, you know, you would think that how can you come back from this? And I don't know how, you know, Boruto is going to be able to justify it, but from what I've seen so far, it's pretty decent. It's a nice follow-up towards towards Shippuden and what the characters would be in the future. But as of right now, it's still going on. The manga's still going on. The anime's still going on. So we won't fully know about the strong impact of this franchise if it ever concludes it to this point until this part of the story is over. So, like I mentioned earlier, we'll probably have to wait until like maybe a couple of years from now to, you know, finish off our discussion here. But if I just hope that it doesn't reach to the point in which, you know, it just goes like really downhill and just becomes even more ridiculous. But at this point in time, I mean, I have no idea how they're going to be able to top the ridiculousness and disappointment that Shippuden brought in.
People say that people like me are just looking for things to complain about. But the thing is, I never come into a series wanting to hate it. But there are so many things about Shippuden that dragged it down for me. Like, I had some attachment to this series. But the thing is, it made me dislike it. I don't get any enjoyment out of not being able to like a series. It's not something that I look for. It's just really frustrating. Making fun of Shippuden at this point doesn't feel like cathartic, like something with nothing good about it, like which you get to destroy with an angry review or something like that. Because Shippuden isn't completely terrible. It has its moments. And that makes it harder to justify all of the harshness I've been throwing its way, because at the end of the day, I never wanted to hate this series. It doesn't make me happy to get angry at a series and destroy it. Like sometimes you'll see reviewers tear apart something that's really terrible. Maybe that's cathartic for them, and it's entertainment for us. But for me, it's not cathartic to dislike Shippuden. It's something that had so much potential and ended up squandering it in the end.
Yeah.
And even now, there are people who are going to defend it, and I understand why. It's just, at this point, I think I've moved on from being a Naruto fan.
That's fair enough. But yeah, I think that bottom line is that it could have led up to something so strong because all the pieces were there. It's just the fact that it just went on for too long. The focus was really scattered and inconsistent, and the fact that the series decided to turn into like really ridiculous directions to bring up like conflict, it just becomes like a genuine letdown, and I just feel more sorry for it than I just genuinely hate it. Like, for people who, like, find it cathartic to, like, tear apart shows if they're terrible, I mean, that's perfectly fine if, you're one of those people, but I just find it more sad than anything. So, yeah, I'm just gonna put down the bottom line. It's like, it's not terrible. It's just like, it just had so much potential to be great, and it just kind of like ruined it. And I don't know if we can ever have an opportunity for it to be like fixed again. So I mean, like I said, the only thing we have now is Boruto. So yeah. But yeah, right before we conclude this podcast, there are, last time that we talked briefly about the 3 Naruto movies that came out of it. Naruto Shippuden has 7 movies. Have you seen any of them?
Honestly, most of what I've seen has to do with the last Naruto movie, and otherwise, no, not really. Okay.
I have seen the first Naruto Shippuden movie when I was in college. Again, very similar to how I saw the other movies, that I had to look through like a BitTorrent site and read through fan translations. And I did see that one, and I did see The Lost Tower, which is kind of like an alternative universe in which when Naruto, travels into the past, and he is in like an alternative version of the Hidden Leaf Village where his parents are still alive, and he has like a different name, and he doesn't want to leave because he wants to be with his family. And that's a really interesting story. I haven't seen the others. I did see the last Naruto movie because I wanted to have a conclusion once and for all. But yeah, I only saw 3 out of the 7, and I haven't seen Boruto yet. I have read the manga though, and I'm still catching up to it, and I have seen a few of the episodes. But from what I've heard, essentially Boruto Naruto the movie is just a more completed version of what's going on in the anime, kind of like scattered around, and it kind of like concludes with Boruto understanding why his father is doing what he's doing as a Hokage. And that doesn't happen until much later on in the anime. And I guess this is like a trend nowadays that I've been seeing, in which like they, instead of like developing various arcs to kind of like spread the story, they basically just take movies based off of the newest anime and then just like make smaller, like longer versions of episodes. Very similar to how, like, the first 2 arcs in Dragon Ball Super are essentially the kind of, like, condensed, but yet at the same time longer versions of the Battle of Gods and Resurrection F arc. So, I do have to watch the movie eventually, and then kind of, like, compare to what I've seen in Naruto Next Generations, but that's for another time. So, yeah, I think that if you don't have anything else to say, I think we can wrap things up.
There is one thing that I do want to talk about, and that's something about Boruto that I can unironically recommend. Well, technically it's about Boruto, but it's actually a special bonus chapter at the end of a special bonus saga, basically at the end of Shippuden, the 7th Hokage and the Scarlet Spring, and it was actually printed in Monthly Shonen Jump, and what it is basically is the story of, the thing that was going around when at the end of Shippuden it's revealed who hooked up with who, and that's because that's basically what everyone cared about. It was noted that not only is Sasuke still a deadbeat dad, but that his daughter looks an awful lot like Karin.
Yeah, exactly.
So people were making a lot of jokes that she was actually Karin's kid, and Sasuke basically dumped her on Sakura's doorstep and made her take care of her. But the thing about that is, they actually do acknowledge that in this story. Like, Sarada, who is... It's kind of weird because the way it's romanized, you could either call Naruto and Sasuke's kids either Boruto and Sarada or Bolt and Solid.
Yeah. But to be fair, if you were to take a look at, like, Naruto and Sakura, you can essentially, like, call them Cherry Blossom and Fish Cake.
Yeah. But anyway, it actually deals this bonus saga basically with Sarada wanting to find out more about her parentage because she actually finds a picture of Karin and notes that she wears glasses similar to hers and that she doesn't really know her dad. And when she tries to ask Sakura more about her dad, she can't really tell her a lot because he left for reasons of his own. Which I'm not trying to say that Sasuke is a good dad to her. He certainly isn't. But I wouldn't expect anything else of him. But basically, it involves Sarada going on a quest to find out more about her parentage. She goes looking for Karin because she wants to know more answers about herself. And even though in this story it does deal with Naruto's kid being pretty annoying because his dad's the workaholic dad cliche, because he's the freaking ruler of the village, give him some space already. Even though it does involve him and Choji's daughter, which, by the way, I want to go over that a little bit because like I said, at the end of Shippuden and basically the beginning of Boruto, we learned that a lot of the characters hooked up with, and basically the last chapter is saying all these characters had babies. And Choji, instead of hooking up with Ino, who some people probably thought were going to end up together, he ended up hooking up with this random character from Hidden Cloud Village, and it's all because her character's name means heavy, and it means either light or heavy. Basically, it's another fat joke.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, and his daughter is really kind of annoying. She's this kind of character who falls in love with every guy she sees.
Yeah, so she basically is like Sakura and Ino when they see Sasuke and they compare him. And she basically is like always falling in love with whatever guy that is around. And of course, because she's Choji's daughter, she's always making a bunch of jokes about being hungry and wanting to have food and stuff like that.
Because fat people are funny, dirt-de-doo. And it involves those two going after her. So despite them being annoying, it's actually a rather humanizing journey for Sarada. And I actually really like her character arc during this. And by the end of it, we actually get a little bit of a reversal, because instead of Naruto's kid wanting to become Hokage, because he kind of has a bit of resentment for it because his dad's the Hokage and his daddy didn't love him. He has a bit of resentment for it, so he doesn't want to become Hokage. Instead, it's Sasuke's kid who wants to become the Hokage. And I actually thought that was pretty cool. And Boruto says, if you become the Hokage, then I'll become your right-hand man. And I genuinely think that's a pretty cool development. So yes, this little series single-handedly got me to like Sasuke's daughter more than I ever liked him.
Yeah,
so
I actually do like Sarada, because basically she has the same characteristics of both of her parents, except that they're like nowhere near as annoying. She has the same like strategic, cool demeanor of Sasuke, but she also has like the intelligence and the bad temper from Sakura. But at the same time, she's like her own character who wants to accomplish her own goals, and she has Naruto's son, and Mizuki, who is like mysterious and nobody knows about his parentage and what have you, until it's revealed that he's technically Orochimaru's son.
He's a clone.
Yeah, he's a clone.
Basically. So yeah, like I said, there's one thing about Shippuden that I will unequivocally recommend, despite its weaknesses, is the 7th Hokage and the Scarlet Spring. So track that down.
Yeah. So I guess, and also I do like the little plot twist in which it's revealed on, why, Karin is, like, very special in the terms of, like, how, Sarada came to be, in which she was, like, Sakura's nurse and helping give birth to her, and then, she was having, like, some difficulties or something, and then, Karin was trying to help her out, and it's a really complicated story that you really need to read for yourself, but it actually ends on a pretty sweet note with, Sasuke siding with his daughter, and then, he has to leave again to his other journeys, and she tells him, please don't go, and then he just kind of, like, reacts in a very sweet way, the way that he used to, do to Sakura back then, and what Itachi did to him. And I thought that was a very sweet moment. And then, of course, it just perfectly ends with a recent picture of the three of them together. So
I would genuinely recommend that arc. Mm-hmm. So if you want me to be fair to this series, I said a lot of positive things. I had a lot more negative things to say this time, but even at the end of the day, Shippuden is not the worst series that I've covered, not by a long shot. I just think that it's really disappointing compared to the potential the previous series had.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that, we can end things off. I don't really have much to say about this. So, Eli, thank you so much for coming on by. I really do appreciate it.
No problem.
So, do you have anything to plug or self-promote right before we go?
Not really. I mean, if you want to support my show, you can check it out at patreon.com/theherooftomorrow, or you can watch it in order at my blog at theherooftomorrow.blogspot.com. So that's really all I have to say at the moment.
All right. And as for me, like I said, by the time that I have this podcast out, I would be gone to MegaCon. And then afterwards, I'll be back to doing some more podcasts and hopefully release a video that I've been wanting to do for a long time, but due to my brief hiatus and needed to take a break after finishing We're in Between, I think now it's about time that I can get back on track with my content. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. If you guys have any comments or feedback about Naruto Shippuden, then leave it in the comments below. Let us know about the positives and the negatives of it, and let us know about your thoughts about any of the Naruto Shippuden movies, or even Boruto. It will be a long time in which we'll be able to cover it. So that's it, everybody. Hope to see you around soon, and take care.
I realize the screaming pain.